Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the Cabinet meeting of Haringey Council today, Tuesday, 9th of July. First and foremost, there's a few statutory notices. Filming at meetings. I'd like you kindly to note that this meeting may be filmed or recorded by the Council for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's internet site or by anyone attending the meeting using any communications method. Although we ask members of the public recording, filming or reporting on this meeting not to include the public seating areas, members of the public attending the meeting should be aware that we cannot guarantee that they will not be filmed or recorded by others who are also attending this meeting. Members of the public participating in the meeting, for example, making deputations, asking questions or making oral protests, should be aware that they are likely to be filmed, recorded or reported upon. By entering the meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. The chair of the meeting, that's me, has the discretion to terminate or suspend filming or recording if, in my opinion, continuation of the filming, recording or reporting would disrupt or prejudice the proceedings, would infringe the rights of any individual or may lead to a breach of a legal obligation by the Council. Okay. Fine, that's item 1, agenda item 1. Item 2, apologies. I look around the meeting, I can see all the Cabinet here, so there are no apologies. Item number 3, which is urgent business. We do not actually have any new items of urgent business. However, we do have an item of late business to consider relating to item 14. That's the budget report and the NTFS update. And I've accepted this as urgent business. The reasons are set out in the published supplementary pack and the table papers, which I hope that you all have. In summary, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee held a special meeting on the 4th of July to consider and comment on this report, and in particular, the Investor Safe proposals for children's services. This was after the publication of the Cabinet agenda, and therefore these comments could not be available at the time of publication. They have now been compiled and are included as an addendum to be considered with this report. We also have a late item of business to consider with regard to item 18, which is the conservation area appraisals. This report was considered by the Regulatory Committee on the 1st of July, again after publication of the Cabinet agenda for the 9th of July, which is today. And the comments of Regulatory Committee and their resolutions are included in the supplementary pack as well. The terms of reference for Regulatory Committee are set out in Part 3, Section B of the Council's Constitution, which I'm sure you all have in your pockets. Require the Cabinet to consider informal recommendations on local development documents, development plan documents and the local development framework and any other planning policy matter. Okay, item 4, declarations of interest. Do Cabinet members have any declarations of interest to make? Okay, thank you, that's a no. Item number 5, which is notice of intention to conduct business in private, any such representations received and a response to any such representations.
Chair, there were no representations received at the publication stage of the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 6. These are the minutes of the Cabinet meeting which was held on the 18th of June. These are contained within your pack, pages 1 to 32. I'm sure that the Cabinet members have already had the opportunity to review these. Can I ask if we can confirm these minutes as being the correct record? Is that agreed? Lovely, thank you very much. Item 7, deputations, petitions, questions. We've received a deputation for consideration at this meeting. This has been put forward by Klaus Kerner and Dave Morris in relation to item 9 on the agenda, which is the Borough Plan, and in relation to the objective of protecting and improving parks, open space and green space, as well as promoting community use. The deputation spokesperson... Oh, hello guys. Long time, Dave, by the way. The Deputation spokesperson will have 3 minutes collectively to address the Cabinet. I will then invite Cabinet colleagues to put forward questions to the Deputation party. Following this, the Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Sustainability will respond to the issues raised in the Deputation, and the Cabinet will continue to consider the report in question in order. Okay. Hello, Dave. Hello, colleagues. Could you kindly make a deputation?
Okay, thank you. Every Cabinet member should have a pack of documents with the presentation as the first document, and underneath that your own Cabinet report responding to a previous scrutiny committee on parks, and also minutes of the Haringey Friends of Parks Forum meeting from April, and a Walk in the Park booklet produced by the Forum. So we come as the Council's key partner in the running of the borough's green spaces. We represent 45 or more local Friends of Parks groups, as well as speaking up for those that use parks and local communities. We've helped raise millions of pounds for improvements, and we annually add thousands of hours of volunteering to improve our parks. Parks are essential facilities. Our green spaces are unique resources for all ages and sections of our communities, for a whole range of unarguable benefits, which are either statutory outcomes the Council are already trying to achieve, or their Council policy commitments. We want all departments to recognise the central importance of parks for all of these outcomes that they are trying to achieve. Despite this essentiality of parks, there's a growing underfunding and understaffing crisis washing over our parks at the moment, emanating since budgets were cut by 50% back in 2011. The situation is deteriorating year on year, and the evidence is irrefutable, and we've referred to some of the evidence in the bullet points, the references at the end. So failing to reverse this underfunding will lead to growing antisocial behaviour, collapse in usage, and a colossal effort and huge costs at a later stage. The solutions have already been identified, most particularly, and we're calling on the Cabinet formally to implement in full the recommendations of the Council's own Scrutiny Committee on Parks last year, many of which have either been agreed or partially agreed at this stage. We're calling on the Council to implement its manifesto commitments to invest more in parks and for adequate funding levels to be provided to the Park Service so they can achieve those commitments. And the Council, the Cabinet has already agreed in principle to protect all Haringey's parks in perpetuity and increase the number of those reaching green flag standards. However, inappropriate uses of parks will compromise and undermine such aims, such as organising or allowing huge disruptive and controversial commercial events which cause detriment and exclude local residents from their park during the summer. So we said instead, this is the most important, if you like, part of this proposal, is we're calling for the Cabinet to initiate a full investigation into how the Park Service can access appropriate sources of funding from a whole range of sources the Council has influence over: CIL and Section 106, Transport for London, travel budgets, public health, and other departments and capital pots, and appropriate outside sources. Can I just say on one of those matters, say for example public health, I believe the budget is £28 million a year to promote public health. For example, you could fund out of the public health budget, which you control, 30 health rangers who could work in our parks, effectively doubling the ground staff for only £1 million a year out of that 28 million. So that's the kind of action that we're asking you to order or to convene an investigation into a whole range of outside funding, not outside, but funding sources that can stave off the gradual collapse of our park service.
Okay. So I have to say that just keep this quiet. I wasn't actually timing you, but just keep it quiet. You know, just in case people think they can come, have a deputation and talk forever. Okay. Are there any questions to the deputation? Councillor Bull?
Yeah, just as a precursor to my question, Dave, I was really glad that you didn't come here and say to the Cabinet, you should do this, this and this and this, and not come up with a proposal or solution or a suggestion to us. So I was really heartened by that. I think that was great. I suppose what I'd quite like to hear is, have you had any conversations with Friends of Parks in other local authorities where local authorities are facing the similar situation that we're facing? And what conversations you had? Is there a Friends of Parks group that covers, I don't know, North London, for instance, so those conversations can happen across borough, so we can get some better ideas on tapping into some of the ideas that you've come up with?
Okay, there's a national movement of 7,000 Friends of Parks groups. I'm chair of the National Federation of Parks and Green Spaces, which represents those groups. So I've got some understanding of what's happening around the country. It obviously is a general problem of the massive cuts to public services. I'm entirely aware of that. And we're not asking for money to be taken out of other services and the outcomes you want to achieve in there. What we're trying to say is that parks provide an essential service. They've got to be managed properly, and they provide statutory outcomes that other services are trying to achieve, and therefore money needs to be put into the park service so that those outcomes can be achieved. I'm not asking anything. I am asking that the Cabinet takes this extremely seriously and initiates action immediately to stave off the growing crisis, including this summer. Last summer, the litter became an unmanageable problem, and also since then the councils had lost accreditation for green flags in a number of cases, and generally the green flag judging of the councils, 22 green flag parks or whatever the number is, was that they're really struggling to achieve what we say are minimum standards that every park should achieve for its local community. So I do hope the Cabinet takes this very seriously, and we're proposing a sensible and urgent course of action.
Councillor Brabazon.
Yeah, thanks for your deputation, and also I know how much work the Friends of Parks do, so I think I can say on behalf of all of us, thanks, because all those volunteer hours actually do represent enormous investment. I was looking briefly at the scrutiny report that you put in the pack, and on page 3, there are references to looking at match funding and so on. You've mentioned a number of funding sources, and I just wondered whether there'd been any meetings that you've had in your forum where match funding ideas have been put forward, whether there's been any progress, and also, Dave, have you talked with officers about any type of lottery bids, even awards for all at the minimum, or other bids where match funding would apply?
Yes, so match funding or outside sources of funding or internal sources of funding from other departments is absolutely essential to the survival of the park service. Obviously, lottery funding, friends groups are partners in lottery bids, but that doesn't deal with the fundamental ongoing revenue needed to manage parks in the borough. These are additional projects. So what we're saying is that, for example, a large percentage, I don't mean large, I mean a substantial percentage of the Transport for London budget, Mayor's policies to promote healthy and safe routes for walking and cycling, parks are the perfect source, but their paths are degenerating, and the Parks Service has no budget to maintain its paths effectively. So Transport for London budgets could be channelled in that direction. Section 106, community interest levy from planning gain, public health I've mentioned, other capital pots, and there are other ideas for the future. What the Cabinet needs to do urgently is convene a kind of immediate investigation into all the pots, some of which might be able to be used immediately to stave off the immediate crisis, and some could be discussed as part of the long-term strategy, which we're doing in partnership with Council Parks officers.
Councillor Amin.
Dave, you mentioned working with 7,000 friends groups across the country, so that makes you a very powerful group of people. I just wondered what you are doing around lobbying for more funding for parks across the country, not just for Haringey, but also, obviously, you represent Haringey here. So what have you done to ensure that we get better funding from central government?
Yes, all levels of government need to take this issue very seriously. Obviously, every council in the country needs to be able to grapple with this from within their budgetary means and areas of influence, which is what we're asking today. But yes, obviously there needs to be pressure on the government, and there is a concerted lobbying effort. One thing the Cabinet could do, for example, is sign the Charter for Parks, which 24 significant national organisations have already signed. Councils are welcome to sign it as well, which calls for parks to become a properly funded statutory service throughout the country. So that would help to put the pressure on the government to release more funds for public services and ring-fence funding for parks.
Okay, before I hand over to Councillor Hearn to respond, I'll just ask one last question. Obviously, you acknowledge that parks are a non-statutory service, and in the times of lower finances for all councils, often a number of councils are deprioritising them. And also some councils are making their parks self-financing, whilst here in Haringey we're still committed to putting some money into parks. How do you feel that councils should prioritise at a time of difficult budgets? What level of priority should parks have? And is it unreasonable for councils to seek to help to try to make parks pay for themselves?
No, of course, parks can't pay for themselves. The point is not to be in competition with other essential services, but to work together to get the maximum benefits. And there's, as I said before, although it's not designated as a statutory service, it provides all kinds of statutory outcomes in terms of health and well-being, transport routes, social cohesion and crime reduction, and so on. But unlike other services, it doesn't have the ring-fence funding to ensure it can fulfil its mandate to achieve those outcomes. So really that's down to Cabinet to make sure that parks as a non-statutory service is getting the funding it needs to provide the statutory outcomes and indeed the council policy commitments that the Cabinet has already made.
Okay, thank you for that, Dave. Can I ask Councillor Hearn to respond to the deputation, please?
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. That was very interesting. I've got some notes here. I'm sorry, I'm being slightly automated with a computer that's not behaving properly either. So here we go. Okay. So we are committed to maintaining a range of good and excellent parks. That is kind of like something fundamental that we are trying to do. And we're very pleased that since the issues we faced last year with the parks, that we've worked very hard, I think, to bring the parks up to a good standard, and we feel hopeful that we will find the results of the examination by Keep Britain Tidy. We're hoping that it will be positive. We're often hopeful. You mentioned we've faced extraordinary cuts since 2011 when we slashed our parks budget. We've struggled very hard, I think, to maintain parks funding, and I certainly last year I managed to protect the budget, but I have to say this, in a year when we have £18 million of cuts to find and £80 million to find, it's going to be very difficult. I think that we need very much to to develop a strategy to look at how we can externally fund our parks as much as we possibly can. The challenge will always be when we seek external funding, of course, is that means we do have to give something back. And for example, you mentioned Transport for London funding for cycling and walking routes through parks, and doing that does have an implication for the nature of the parks in themselves. So this thing I am committed to, and it's this, and it is actually working with officers to look at under every stone to see what we can find by way of funding. And I agree with you that there are some streams that we could approach to look at how we work these things. Now, absolutely every single member of the Labour group has mentioned to me that the SIL could be very useful for funding all kinds of things. And so this is on a part of a very long list of people who think that the SIL could fund everything. But, you know, the SIL is in a certain amount of money. Okay, so we're going to have to be arguing quite strongly about trying to get that kind of funding. We've got a budget for about £12 million of capital budget funding this year, which we're developing a work programme through. We've done that in consultation with you, the Friends of the Parks, as well as looking at other needs and things that need repairing as well. Sorry, let me just... And we're very aware of the importance of parks, as well as part of delivering our, dealing with the climate change, looking at all the health stuff and things like that. And I do believe there's many ways to look at further bringing in funding to parks. But what I think I want to say to you, and I know this will probably make me not popular today, is that we have reached the crunch point where we have to think about what we need to do around the funding of parks, but we also do have to think about all the other responsibilities we have. And you will know, if you've watched how we've tried to manage our budget in the last 10 years or so, that the cuts that have been made have been in the non-statutory services. Okay? And it's very difficult to defend parks when we're actually cutting social care for individuals. So I am committed to doing my best to do that, but I'm quite realistic as well. And that, yes, I will be sitting down with officers to look at where are all the other funding streams as well. What else can we maximise in terms of getting funding into our parks? But I think it will be a mixed bag of ways to fund the parks, and it's not going to be easy.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hearn, for that response. I'd like to thank the Deputation for coming today and speaking to the Cabinet. You're free to observe the rest of the meeting from the gallery. There is no right of reply, I'm afraid. The Borough Plan is next. Yes, we are going to take the Borough Plan next, yeah. All right, thank you guys very much. Okay. Item number 9. Item number 9 is the Borough Plan 2019 to 2023, which is the Year 1 Delivery Plan. You can find this on pages 73 to 144 of your pack. The Borough Plan itself is the means by which this Labour Council... Actually, do you know what? We're not going to do item 9 next. We're going to do item 8 next, and then we're going to come on to item 9. Right? You see...
Just because the deputation was in relation to item 9.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we're going to do item 8 next. I do apologise. Hold on. Just keep... Sorry, can you just bear with me one moment, please? Councillor Nevis, sorry, we are going to do item 9 less because the deputation was in relation to item 9, so the deputation, we're going to do the item straight after it. Okay. Don't worry. We're going to have a long meeting. We're going to have a long meeting tonight, and this will make it just an extra minute longer. Right. The Borough Plan, Delivery Plan, Year 1 Delivery Plan, items 73 to 144 of your pack. The Borough Plan itself is a document through which this administration is translating the manifesto which we ran on last year into a delivery plan for action. We have set out our strategic vision, and this is shaping the policy and the decisions that we are making over the course of the next 3 years. Many of these decisions are going to be challenging, but we do believe that the manifesto was aspirational and that the borough plan is deliverable. As new administration, we have rightly set out this aspirational plan, and it contains objectives across all council services. The Local Government Association peer review team praised us for our ambition, but felt that we should have more success by focusing on a smaller number of key objectives. This report sets out the key aims and delivery plans for year 1. I'm sure that it will provide a greater sense of shared purpose and which will increase our overall successes. I'm keen to have a broader conversation and to take this document out into the community and to discuss it as to how our stakeholders can help us move forward. Over the previous administration, we had a corporate plan, and the corporate plan sought to make the council the lead actor in delivering the council's objectives. The borough plan wants to work with stakeholders, with businesses, with residents and with the voluntary sector, and we're keen to work with them as partners and to move our aspirations forward. Okay, the report, as I've said, is from page 73 of your pack. Can I ask whether Cabinet member colleagues have any questions on the report? Okay. Can I then ask if any other councillors present have any questions on the report? Okay. Then, if I can ask you to turn to pages 73 and 74. The recommendations are at 3.1 to 3.3. Can we agree these recommendations? Agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much. Now, apologies, Councillor Nevis. We're moving now back to item number 8. This is the scrutiny review on fire safety. Councillor Nevis, if you could kindly come forward and introduce the review.
Thank you, Chair. In the aftermath of Grenfell, it was felt important that we review what was taking place in our borough, as many other local authorities did, since we were concerned that the issues that led to that tragedy might well not be unique to Grenfell Tower. During the course of this review, scrutiny has taken evidence, and in fact I have personally met with residents from Homes for Haringey. We've taken evidence from the fire brigade, from council officers in planning and building control and Homes for Haringey. And also, we've also taken evidence from other London boroughs, other local authorities, looking at the same questions and issues. And we've reviewed quite a great deal of material, both from the Hackett inquiry and other sources on fire safety. The review performed an important function of reviewing how we should respond to Grenfell Tower. And what was clear was that communication with residents was vitally important, both how we tell them what they should do when there is a fire and how we communicate the issues of risks and how we decrease those risks and work with them closely to do that. So a strong and important recommendation within this report is around that communication, both be it through what we present to residents when they become residents, what we provide in the environment and how we support them to make sure that they mitigate fire risk. One of the key things that was clear was that having a great proportion of leasehold properties that were often sublet presented a great challenge to mitigating fire risk. We also felt very strongly that enabling residents to report in a timely manner and being clear on how things were followed up was central to making sure that both residents felt safe, but they also had a mechanism by which to report issues and communicate with us, since we know that they're often the people who are the eyes and ears and see the issues on the ground when we do not. The issue of a stay-put policy was discussed at length as part of the review, and it was clear that evidence suggests stay-put policies, when compartmentalisation is in vigour in a building can be a very useful and important mechanism for fire safety. But we recognise that post-Grenfell, both residents may not have confidence in stay-put policies, but also that when compartmentalisation is breached in a building, that can therefore make that policy no longer valid. So part of our report emphasises both the importance of discussing and communicating effectively the value of compartmentalisation, but also looking closely at whether or not the actions of tenants and residents sometimes has breached compartmentalisation. We discussed the issue of sprinklers, which is a hot topic nationally, should we be universally implementing sprinklers? We felt we couldn't draw a conclusion, and of course I should have said at the beginning that this is an interim report, and one of the reasons this is an interim report is because we are still waiting for Hackett to begin to tell us that the review is complete, but to begin to make some clear recommendations and plans going forward. And also because
Sorry. Can we have no heckling from the audience, please, from the gallery? Sorry, gentlemen, this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. Councillor Das Neves.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, it's very hard for me to communicate the things that came out of the scrutiny review if the man upstairs continues speaking over me. Thank you. So we felt that at the moment there isn't a conclusive recommendation around sprinklers, and indeed the two local authorities who came to us and presented some of the evidence had reached different views on this matter. So we hope that the plans and implementation that comes out of Hackett might well give us some more information and understanding on sprinklers and what should be implemented. And one of the key issues really is going to be about cost for us, and cost, I think, across the country, really. Forgive me, Chair. We also feel very strongly that our residents are at the heart of our fire safety, and that we recommended strongly in our report that there is a clear mechanism by which residents can come to us and tell us what their concerns are, and that be recorded and responded to in a timely fashion. And indeed, I've had further conversations with the Chief Executive of Homes Haringey along those lines. We will be coming back to this matter once Hackett has reported, and also there is the public inquiry, and we expect that much will come from that public inquiry and further things for us to respond to. Finally, I think it will be really important. There are some matters that we've highlighted in the report, and it's very important that those issues are pursued within the panel for housing, the housing scrutiny panel, and that panel picks up some of the issues and keeps a rolling brief. One of the most positive things about the review was that we were able to discuss and inform and progress alongside Homes for Haringey, and actually our questions, we hope, stimulated Homes for Haringey to think differently about some of the issues. And I think I'll leave it there.
Okay, Councillor Nevis, thank you very much. Can I ask Councillor Ibrahim to respond, please?
So, thank you, Councillor Das Neves, and I'd just like to take this opportunity to welcome the input of overview and scrutiny in helping the development of the housing and fire safety policy. This is particularly important in the aftermath of Grenfell Tower, and it's we've just passed actually the second anniversary of that really tragic event which shook the country and local government across the board. And just to reiterate that our thoughts from this council chamber are with those victims. So in light of what happened 2 years ago, it's right that we put the safety of our residents first, and that's why this is a critical part of our borough plan and our commitment across the board to drive up the quality of housing. And as you'll, all of us will recently know that there was a fire at building in Barking, so we know that this is something that we'll have to, it will be an ongoing conversation, something that we'll have to keep looking at in terms of the way buildings are built, in terms of the way buildings are managed, etc. So this isn't something that we can that we can ignore. So I look forward to working closely with my colleagues on scrutiny, and I'm glad that you've mentioned that the Housing and Regen Scrutiny Panel will be carrying on the work of this, and as we move to the next phase of the report. And also it's very important for us that we consider the implications for the council once the recommendations of the Hackett review come forward. Just like to also end with, I was really impressed with the recommendations. Actually, it looks like a lot of work has gone into that. And just to say that, as you will have noted, that they're agreed across the board. One of them is partially agreed because part of that responsibility to do with care homes is we've got to recognise that the Care Quality Commission has a role to play in that as well. So what we've got to make sure that we do is that the part of that which is our responsibility, particularly you've gone into detail and mentioned the role of the commissioning unit to make sure that they're monitoring across the board the quality, but also recognising that the Care Quality Commission has a key role to play in looking at fire safety and standards in homes.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Ibrahim. Councillor Desno, if I could ask if you just take that microphone there, because other councillors might want to come up and ask questions of the report, and they need to speak there. Is that okay? Because we're going to ask just the mic at the end, please. Yes, go and sit next to Gideon. Don't worry, he won't bite. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for allowing me to add something. The interruption slightly
I'm sorry about
sidelined me. I just had one other matter to.
Okay.
I just had
sorry,
one other.
sorry,
I just had one other matter to raise.
Councillor Desno, one moment, please. Okay. Okay. This is the last time. This is the last time I'm going to ask. Okay. Right. Could you kindly help that gentleman? Could you, okay. Okay. Look.
No, I did, but that's fine.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. So I had a couple of points to make that I wasn't able to make before, so I'd like to make them now. One was that when I referred to cost, what I was actually referring to was the balance between cost and what some say, there are some argument around whether or not when you retrofit sprinklers, you actually break up and compromise. Thank you, the compartmentalisation. Thank you. And the other point that I wanted to make that's very important for us as a local authority is that as we come towards the review and its plans, we need to be very clear that there will be demands on officers, and we need to be thinking about the training and how we increase capacity, because it seems likely that as an authority we will have greater responsibilities, and perhaps a reversal of the outsourcing of responsibilities will occur. But there are issues within building control around having the knowledge and having the trained officers to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Can I ask whether any councillors present have either any questions on the scrutiny review or any questions on the response? Councillor Brabazon.
Questions, page 47. On the Hackett, the paragraph on the Hackett review, I draw the inference from paragraph 2.11 that we've already got some idea what might be included in the Hackett recommendations. So what I want to know, I'm not sure if I should ask you this, Lucia, or probably Amina, is it says here, one of the things is clearer roles and responsibilities throughout the design and construction process, as well as during a building's occupation. So it would seem to me that some of this guidance could already be implemented in dealing with applicants coming forward with new buildings. And I wonder why we need to wait for the Hackett review to tell us this, since the recommendation tells us this already. That's my first question. The second one is related to the recommendations, page 69. Second recommendation. What's the timescale for the working group? Has it been set up? If not, when will it be set up? It's agreed that it should be. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to look at the both of you. Who wants to take what?
I agree there are some recommendations that are clearly coming out of Hackett. The issue is about, there are questions around how things are implemented, and that is as much to do with how the structures will be in place that will enable us to do the things that they're asking us. So I think that, but I think there's a question for the Cabinet member about where we're at on those.
Councillor Ibrahim.
So what I'll do is I'll refer to Councillor Brabazon to page 69, which has got all the responses to the recommendations. Yeah. So in terms of the working group, it says to be established, and which will comprise of officers from the Council's Health and Safety Team, Building Control, Homes for Haringey, and when we look at training and developing staff for these roles, we will look to support care leavers. So what I recognise is that doesn't have a date on it, but I can follow that up with officers to put a specific date on it. And you asked a specific question about the Hackett review, and I'll just find the recommendation for that. Sorry, which number? 8. Yeah, so it's all included in the responses on page 69. But in terms of the so your specific question about whether we could implement things that we know are an issue before the recommendations of the Hackett review, yes, of course.
Councillor Amin.
It's the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny. Just to ask whether, I know you've mentioned housing associations, but I'm mindful that half the social housing in the borough is with housing associations. So I'm just wondering whether the next continuation of any further reviews should include at least a large housing association and a smaller housing association. So, for example, I know Notting Hill have about 3 properties or 5 properties, but I'm keen on looking at the scan of kind of housing associations and what are they doing around fire safety. And at the moment, I don't get that feel for it because, you know, unlike Homes for Haringey, we don't have the feedback directly from them, but they are, after all, they are still our residents, so feedback from housing associations and what they're doing would be a helpful thing.
I think that's a very helpful comment, and thank you, and I'll take that back to the review when we pick up. We did address the matter of towers that were like Grenfell and had similar cladding, and looked at all of those across the borough, both in the private and in housing association and Homes for Haringey. So we addressed that immediately. But it's an interesting question as to how much we could and should review other housing associations. So I can take that back. And as I said, we will pick this up when Hackett has moved a little bit into implementation and can give us some questions that we can then directly ask.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other councillors present have any questions for Councillor Des Neves from Scrutiny or Councillor Ibrahim? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Brabazon, for asking one of my questions. I've just got 2 questions. I'll do them one at a time.
If you could do them both together, if that would be better,
Okay.
because we've got a packed agenda tonight.
Okay. So the first is that we've seen quite a number of cases across the country where the developers have put unsafe cladding on buildings, and then they are mainly trying to shift that cost onto leaseholders and councils and the government. So how is the council planning to make sure that developers whose decisions both this time and in the future create safety hazards cannot avoid paying the price for rectifying them and avoid passing them to the council, essentially? That's one. No, sorry. And the second was that I understand from residents that leaseholders and tenants who've put grills and gates and things on their doors for security reasons are being asked to remove those as part of the fire safety work. Now, I know that in Camden, people have been told they need to take them off ASAP, and it might be 2 years before they're replaced. They're not doing the replacement at the same time. So residents there are feeling quite worried about that and vulnerable and insecure. Will we be able to give assurances to residents that when their grills and gates come off, we'll be giving them the new doors at that time that are secure and fire safe?
So, in terms of your second question, I suppose that would be something that we need to have a conversation with Homes for Haringey about. I think the reality is that what's happened and what we found with recent assessments of buildings, that some of the things that have made compartmentalisation an issue or fire safety an issue in those blocks are to do with things that residents have done themselves. So, for example, in some buildings, what we've found recently is that the compartmentalisation has been undermined by very, very simple things, like, for example, putting nails in walls, etc. So, for us, it's about getting a picture across the board. Now, so for example, what you give as the example is the grills that people put on their front doors. Often elderly people do that. It's about making sure that they're in a position to escape if there is and it's just making sure that you don't have something different everywhere. And it is a challenge, actually. On your first question, which was, just remind me, I do actually prefer them one by one. How do we make sure that the developers, yeah, absolutely. And, you know, as we know, we've got a couple of buildings in the borough with that issue. They're not Homes for Haringey buildings. But in terms of how do we legally prevent developers from doing that, I think that's quite a technical question, so I'll refer that to officers. Is that all right?
I think the short answer is that where it's a kind of privately owned block with private tenants, the council's powers are close to zero. Now, of course, we can look at that in a bit more detail to understand whether there's any influence we can exercise over situations like that. But where the council doesn't have a kind of landlord interest, it's very hard to see how we could take any kind of regulatory role in the way that the costs are passed on. But we'll take that away and have another look.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Barnes. Any other councillors got any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the report, Councillor Neves. I know that Scrutiny have looked into this and will continue to do so, and we thank you for your work. Right, if I ask Cabinet if you can turn to page 33 of your pack, the recommendations are paragraphs 3.1 to 3.2. Can we agree these? Agreed. Lovely, thank you very much. Next, we move on to item number 10. This is on page 145 to 168 of your pack. This is the LGA Corporate Peer Challenge. This is the Cabinet response to its recommendations. All councils are recommended to have a peer challenge. This is whereby we are. I won't use the word investigated, but certainly people who, other councillors, other councils who do the things that we do, have a look at whether or not they're comfortable, whether we're using best practice and whether they can share some of their good news and good practice with us. I think the reality is that nobody should fear criticism, and that everybody should welcome fair comment from their peers, other councils, other council leaders, other council officers. Earlier this year, this council decided it would be a good time for us to invite the Local Government Association to carry out a corporate peer review of our council. And the peer review process, as I said, is part of the important approach to local government-led improvement and mutual support. This was an opportunity to tell the story of where Haringey has got to and to show how far we've come since the last peer review, which was back in 2014. And we got an accurate representation of the challenges that we face, and we sought to be clear about what we need to do to ensure we are in the best shape to be able to deliver our ambitious plans for our residents within this context. It is important that we celebrate the positive role that councillors, staff, partners and residents play in making Haringey such a great place to live and to work. We are mindful of the key challenges set out in the report, and we are taking active steps to address our financial position and the delivery of our borough objectives. As a Cabinet, we welcome the findings set out in the report. We'd like to thank the peer review team for their hard work and their honest feedback, and we are committed to address the issues raised within the report and to move our council forward. Can I ask whether Cabinet colleagues have any additional questions on this report? Okay, can I ask whether any councillors present have any questions on the report? Councillor Barnes?
Thank you. So I've two questions again. The first is, as part of the peer review, the Council has decided to create a new post, the Head of Leaders Office, that will cost the Council at least £70,000 a year. Why was this considered a priority rather than hiring extra frontline staff? And the second is that the Corporate Challenge peer review recommends that the Council obtains management grip for the delivery of operational and financial plans, and as a result, the action plan outlines that there will be more regular financial reporting and improved and more timely information for services on budgets. With this in place, can the Cabinet member assure us that there will be no surprises like there were in the last financial year when an unexpected £6.5 million black hole appeared in the budget?
Okay, on the first point, the Head of Leaders Office is not a new post. It's effectively a re-provided post. There was a member of staff who was doing that role, and they are no longer working in the administration. Effectively, the role, once that person left, was slightly re-profiled and was put out to appointments with the new name. But there was somebody who was doing that before. It's just a re-profiled post. With regards to the other budgeting issues, we're always seeking to be aware of what different challenges this council may face. Part of the more regular reporting is to ensure that where there are demand pressures, and where we ended up with you described it as a £6 million black hole. Effectively, these were demand pressures. There are a number of services, as you're aware, that the council has a statutory duty to provide, but they are demand-led. We don't know how many people that come through the door needing the service, but when the money runs out, we can't stop providing that service. And across the council, a number of these demand-led services, they cause us issues, and they cause a number of councils up and down the country the same issues. Right. What we're seeking to do is to be as aware as possible, as early as possible, that where these demand pressures occur, that we can look at how we need to adjust our budget accordingly. Okay. Any other councillors got any questions on this? Okay. If we can turn to page 146. The recommendation to this report are paragraph 3.1 to 3.3. Are these agreed? Agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much. We now turn to item number 11. This is page 169 to 188 of your pack. This is a report on council-owned sites in Wood Green. Councillor Adjei, I'd be great if you could kindly introduce your reports, please.
Thank you, Chair. The report sets out proposals for a long-term strategic development to make best use of council-owned sites in Wood Green. The council, as a major landowner, can use its land assets to deliver a range of different uses that are appropriate for a town centre like Wood Green. The council is therefore in the process of developing a strategy of how best to use its own land to deliver employment, housing, civic and social infrastructure and maximise community benefits. To that effect, the council has been working with residents, businesses and stakeholders to develop a strategic regeneration framework for Wood Green that would deliver new homes and jobs through the delivery of highly accessible, well-designed places as the only metropolitan town centre in North London. Therefore, the first key decision to be made is where the council should locate its accommodation, as they are currently spaced or spread rather across 8 separate buildings in Wood Green. A decision to deliver new council accommodation providing a range of community and civic uses, the town centre and existing communities, will drive footfall to the area and unlock the remaining buildings and sites for other uses. The report provides more information at paragraph 6 with background information starting with the London Plan 2018 with Wood Green as an opportunity area and talks about specific sites in the area. The recommendation are set out at paragraph 3 and I ask Cabinet to note and agree then as set out to enable the next steps of work to be carried out by officers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Adjei. Can I ask your Cabinet colleagues to get any additional questions on this report? Okay, thank you. Can I ask if any councillors present have any additional questions on this report? I'll go to Councillor Das Neves first.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if the Cabinet member could talk a little bit about how we arrived at the options within this paper, and because obviously there's been a lengthy process around thinking about both council accommodation and Wood Green.
Thank you. There's been a number of work done by officers, including looking at various council buildings, including this one, what's known as George Meehan House, which used to be Woodside House, the River Park House, Station Road, and others. So officers have been carrying out a review in terms of maximization. This building, obviously, being part of that work, for some is fortunate, for some is unfortunate that this building obviously has now been listed. So in terms of its use, it's very limited in terms of what we can do about it. And there's quite a lot of information, as I said, in paragraph 6 that actually provides background in terms of the work that's been done by officers leading to where we are now. The other site that was looked at was Kingfisher site, which is in the cultural centre in Wood Green, and also the library site, which is what is being looked at as one of the main sites as a building, if we were to go down that route to say, well, let's co-locate everything there, or if we were to go down the two sites approach, let's look at this site to be used as well as the library site. But all that information in terms of what led to this bit is all in the report, paragraph 6.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you. So one of the things that we noticed was that the report that you're considering tonight puts a lot of emphasis on the idea that Station Road is the best place for blue chip companies because it's so close to the tube. But the library site is a couple of hundred metres from the station, and wondered whether that was being overemphasised when actually there's an opportunity to get more people to walk a bit further into Wood Green and perhaps benefit our local economy. So is that overemphasised? And then there's a question around putting all of the multiple activities into a single site. Will this be used as an opportunity to have more sensitive arrangements, for example, for the library, where since the customer centre, service centre is there now, it's changed the dynamic a little, it's a little more noisy, and can this opportunity be used to make the sites and spaces more appropriate for the deemed uses?
Thank you. Let me take the first one in terms of multiple activities. Haringey obviously is not going to be unique if we were to go down that route in terms of using the site for multiple activities. One would hope that in doing that, that we would have a better acoustic so that we don't, when people are in the library, for example, there's no disturbance, and that when the customer services center as well is located there, so also that when people are in the area, you've got the one service or the council, you don't have to go from, let's say, Station Road, for example, and then walk down to the library if you have to go down to the library to do some stuff there. So I think that's something, obviously, that we would look at in terms of ensuring that services are better provided to the community in one area. In terms of the first point about the proximity between the walking distance and, yeah, well, a number of options were considered. I mean, of course, it's good to walk. We're not going to be forcing people to walk. There are those, in terms of the work that was done, it was done not on the basis of, oh, well, Station Road is, I think it was done on the basis of which site has the capacity to actually co-locate and take everything. And that was why, in officers' view and in my view, currently the library site was seen to be the best.
I'm just going to ask Richard to just add a few technical points to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, so that's all correct in terms of capacity of the different sites. The other aspect around the attractiveness of the buildings on Station Road is strong. We've had some strong commercial property advice around the commercial values of those buildings because of their location. So it's come from professional advice.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Any other councillors with questions? Okay. Right, if we can turn to page 170 of your pack, the recommendations for this report are 3.1 to 3.4. Can we agree these, please? Agreed? Thank you. Item number 12. Item number 12 is the results of the non-statutory consultation on the options for the future of Stamford Hill Primary School and its possible amalgamation with Tiverton Primary School. This is on pages 189 to 260 of your pack. Okay, Councillor Brabazon, can you introduce your report, please?
Yes. In March 2019, a report was brought to the Cabinet setting out options for the future of Stamford Hill Primary. Agreement was sought from the Cabinet, which was given to commence a pre-statutory consultation. This is the next report in the process as we move forward, which presents the results of the non-statutory consultation and which proposes that the schools are amalgamated. There was a 6-week public consultation. There were 52 responses. Of course, governors of both schools being consulted extensively, and the report includes all the details of that consultation. The there is an issue about the long-term sustainability of both Stamford Hill and, to a lesser extent, Tiverton, but both schools have falling numbers. This is not peculiar to these schools, but there is a particular issue in Planning Area 3, of which both those schools are a part. We have a duty to ensure the curriculum is available for all children, that they can access the full curriculum, and schools with declining roles find that very difficult, especially one-form entries such as Stamford Hill. So I am bringing this report to you to agree that we move to the next step of the process, and we move forward with the possible amalgamation of Tiverton and Stamford Hill. I'm not sure there's any more I need to say. It will mean the closure of Stamford Hill, with pupils being accommodated by Tiverton, which will create a single school from one site. This is our preferred option as the local authority. We believe that is the best solution for this particular problem, and also taking into account the position of Stamford Hill subsequent to its Ofsted inspection. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brabazon. Cabinet colleagues, any other questions for Councillor Brabazon on this report? Do any of the councillors present have any questions for Councillor Brabazon on this report? Okay. Sorry? Did I overlook you? Okay, let's practice that one. Councillor Amin, could you answer your question, please?
I thought, I was just wondering, because I know the idea is to amalgamate the I'm just wondering what's going to happen to the building, because I know the aim is to amalgamate the two schools. And what happens to the leadership of the school? Does that mean there is going to be just one head teacher, or there will be an executive head and a head teacher? So I just wondered about the wider implications of following this course.
With regard to the building, I think the local authority is already considering options for this following the amalgamation and the extended use of it by the Education Service. There are plenty of options available, and I have no doubt in due course a report will be brought when these have been further discussed. But of course we want it to remain in education use. With regard to your second question, it would be the schools would be amalgamated and there would be a single headship, is my understanding. Obviously, meetings have been going on and will continue to go on about that transition.
Okay, thank you for that. Sorry that I overlooked you. I'm looking at the size of the agenda today and trying to rattle on. Any other councillors present have any questions? Okay, that's no. Right, if we can turn to page 190. The recommendation for this report are paragraphs 2.1 and 2.2. Are these agreed? Agreed? Yes. Thank you very much. Item number 13. Osborne Grove Nursing Home Feasibility Study. This is on pages 261 to 300 of your pack. Councillor James, can I ask you kindly to introduce your report, please?
Thank you. This report follows on from a Cabinet decision in June 2018 authorising a feasibility study on the future of Osborne Grove. This is that report. Its recommendations are for the rebuilding of the home using the whole of the home site, including the space currently taken by clinic at the front of the site, to create a 70-bed nursing home. This process has been undertaken with significant input from the Osborne Grove Co-Design Reference Group that includes local councillors, representatives, trade unions, other local stakeholders, including relatives of residents of the home. So I'm extremely pleased to be able to recommend this report and its preferred option, which is option 4. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor James. Can I ask Cabinet colleagues if there are any questions, any additional questions on this report? Can I ask whether any other councillors present have any other questions on this report? I'll take Councillor Barnes first and then Councillor Dasneves.
Thank you. Councillor James, I think, is answering all of these ones. I've got 3 questions. The first is around paragraph 6.3.3 that says that 2 existing residents will be expected to relocate. I wondered what assurances you can give to them that they'll have options for where they go, a clear time frame, and for when they'll be moved, and support both with the move, during the move and after the move. In paragraph 6.3.7, it says the cost of installing sprinklers hasn't been factored into the costings for the designs. And given everything we've heard in the fire safety report about how much more expensive retrofitting properties with sprinklers is than doing them during construction, and also about the compartmentalisation, is this really prudent? And the final question is just about how did we reach a situation where a building that's about 11 years old needs to be replaced at a cost of millions of pounds on top of millions of pounds of funding required to keep it operating below capacity over the past few years? Why were these issues not preempted?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, in regard to relocation of the remaining residents, there'll be another paper coming to Cabinet if this one is approved in September, asking for permission to consult. So that will be another process that will take place in which the residents and their families will obviously be consulted, and assurances will be given, and their preferences will be taken on board, and nothing is going to be done hastily in that respect. In terms of 6.3.7 and the cost of installing sprinklers, I might pass that to officers in terms of technicalities as to why that cost wasn't factored into the costs as they've been laid out in the feasibility study. And as you point out, the building is only 11 years old. Yeah, I also find it quite shocking, and there's no point denying that fact. When you visit the home, you can see that it's not suitable for nursing care, in that the doors are too narrow, the rooms are small, there aren't ensuite wet rooms, the lifts, there are no lifts that can accommodate a bed. So basic design things that you would require for a nursing home aren't there. My understanding is that its original design was for residential respite care rather than for long-term nursing care. But still, it is a matter of some concern. And one of the reasons why I think I've really welcomed this feasibility study and the depth and seriousness of the work undertaken by the designers in conjunction with the reference group is exactly the desire to future-proof any new design, to make sure that it will stand the test of time, it will deliver the services that we want, and that it will do so for the generations to come. And I think that's if there's one lesson that I hope everybody has learnt, is that that is absolutely essential. If I can pass over to officers about sprinklers.
Thank you, Councillor Jones, and thank you, Councillor Barnes. Yes, I mean, we have designed the options in accordance with current regulations. As Councillor James and both of yourself mentioned, there is an element of future-proofing that we need to do, so we're not excluding or discounting the idea that we would include sprinklers. We're just exploring what that would mean in the current context. So we're keeping it an open, and that's why we wanted to specifically mention it here.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Dasneves.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions. One was, whether or not you could summarise the feelings and feedback in a broad sense of current residents on our chosen option. The other one is perhaps for something for you to come back with when you come back with the report to Cabinet in September, which was around, so Councillor Barnes has asked about how we'll accommodate those residents who are there and who are moved. And my question is a bit deeper around the risk assessment and mitigations that we might put in place around that move. I think there's a broader question, which is no matter what we put on this site, how we will make sure that the quality of service is what it should be. So we know that one of the reasons that site is underutilised is because of that. And I know that the council has made great strides to improve the quality of care there. But I think it would be useful to understand how we think things will be different when we put something on that site. And I think lastly, I suppose we'd all like reassurance that when the building is knocked down, that that site is preserved for this use, and that something doesn't happen that means that that's no longer viable, or that we have a clear process as to what would happen if that was a feeling or an idea that was floating around.
Councillor James.
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with the last one first. This is a significant investment in public service that we're proposing here. The capital costs over the successive years are outlined in the report. They will be built into our budget, and that process will go ahead. The next stage will be detailed architectural plans in which the co-design group will continue to have an involvement, and I would hope that if there's one thing that's demonstrated from this report is the seriousness of intent to provide nursing care on this site, and a realisation that the need for nursing beds is significant in Haringey, is only going to get worse because, or get more, because of the demographics of the borough, and that going forward we want to have a greater control over, or greater opportunity in terms of the number of beds that we have available to us within the borough. And we see that as a very important part of strategy for planning for people who need nursing care in the future. In terms of the quality of care, we're hoping to be that this will be a public-public partnership. We're engaged with the NHS to look at delivery options, precisely because we recognise that it would be useful to have that clinical expertise, going for the future, but also I think involved in the planning process as we move forward. Risk assessments and mitigations for residents, all these things will be covered in the consultation process. Will be part of that process. You're to take on board the wishes of the existing or the remaining residents and their families, what is going to be best for them, and what mitigations we need to put in place. That will be covered in the consultation process. And in terms of the feelings of the residents, that we have had representatives, families representatives on the co-design reference group, and they have all approved the option, the preferred option.
Thank you very much for that response, Councillor James. Any other councillors got any questions on this? Councillor Demir, were you just adjusting your glasses, or were you indicating a wish to speak? Adjusting your glasses. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. If we can kindly turn to page 262 of your pack, the recommendations here are paragraphs 3.1.1 to 3.1.7. Can we agree these? Agreed. Lovely. Thank you very much. Item number 14. Budget report and MTFS update. This is on pages 301 to 332 of your report. Item 14, which is this budget report. This report has exempt information to be considered in the private part of the meeting. Therefore, we will consider the recommendations as set out as section 3, subject to considering exempt information at item 28. I'll also briefly set out how this item will be considered to provide clarity for public attendees. I'll first ask Councillor Ajay to introduce the report, then we'll take questions from Cabinet members and councillors on the report. I'll then ask Councillor Das Neves to introduce the addendum, which includes overview and scrutiny's comments on the report and on recommendations on the children's Invest to Save items. Councillor Brabazon will then provide a response to the recommendations. Okay, that now being clear, Councillor Ajay, can you introduce your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This report provides an update on the impact of the Provisional General Fund 2018-19 outturn on Council's finances, which is at Section 7. A summary of the 2019-20 budget position is set out at period 2, including delivery of the agreed savings is at Section 8. An update on the local changes of the medium-term financial strategy assumptions outlined in the February report, including an update on the national economic picture and local authority funding that's set out at paragraph 9, and an update on the progress with the live budgeting agenda and the business planning process to deliver a balanced 2021 budget and a refreshed MTFS. It provides detail of the proposed Invest to Save program in children's services, which has already been outlined by the leader, and also sets out further budget changes now proposed to be incorporated into the future of the MTFS 2020 to 2025 set out at Section 10. And obviously, in terms of the Invest to Save, that also has been outlined. I would just like to draw colleagues' attention to, and I know a number of people have been very anxious in terms of asking questions about when are we coming with details of the budget process, which is still in making. I just would like to draw members' attention to paragraph 9.3 about the spending review known as the SR9. And if members can acquaint themselves with the statement there. So Haringey obviously is not alone in this because we are still waiting for information from the government. So at this point, the most likely scenario is that the 2019-20 local government funding position would be used as the basis for a shorter-term settlement for 20-21 at least, and potentially for 21-22. There's also the issue of fair funding review and business rates reset. 9.5 covers the where we're dealing with the fair funding review, and 9.8 covers the what we're now dealing with in terms of or provides information in terms of the business rate retention and reset. 9.10 talks about or focuses about the pressures that a number of services faces, and it goes on. I won't go line by line. I presume my colleagues would have had the opportunity to look at them. But I would draw attention to paragraph 9.6, which obviously talks a bit about Brexit. And obviously, and the delay in terms of SR19, as I alluded to previously. 10 of it talks about the business planning process. And moving on swiftly, I would draw members' attention to paragraph 10.8, which talks about the planning process going forward in terms of when reports will be brought to this cabinet by way of an update. And 11 talked about the contribution to strategic outcomes, and 12, the comments of the Chief Finance Officer are detailed there. I will stop there, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Raja. You did point out in number 11, adherence to strong and effective financial management will enable the Council to deliver its stated objectives and priorities. Okay, I am going to ask whether or not any councillors present have any questions on the open part of this report. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you. Two questions. The first is, what impact do you anticipate that cutting the grant for Alexandra Palace Trust by 10% will have on probably the borough's most beloved cultural asset? And then, appreciating the details of the dispute involving Ali Pali Park and Park Charitable Trust are exempt, can it be publicly stated who the dispute is between and what is the Council's maximum exposure?
On the first part, we are still in discussions with officers of Alexandra Palace on that. So at this stage, but and in terms of the second part, that is exempt information which cannot be shared.
Okay, right. Thank you. I'm now going to invite Councillor Das Neves to come, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee met last week to review the Invest to Save proposals laid out as part of the children's portfolio, budget portfolio. The committee was really pleased to be invited and have the opportunity in a short time frame to look over these and make a contribution to a lifestyle budgeting process. And we feel it's really important and a signal of a different way of beginning to do budgeting. So we're grateful to that. We're also really grateful that it's very clear that officers are, within the children's portfolio, looking really carefully at opportunities to both balance the budget but actually invest in our staff, invest in training and in the quality of our care and services, and in some cases bringing services back in-house to provide them in hopefully in a better way. So those things I think we felt very important to commend Cabinet on. One of the key issues we felt were that these are new proposals and new things that we're doing for the first time. So it feels important that we set some really clear review points and targets, and that those are reviewed within the Children's Scrutiny Panel, so that we're very clear on what progress is being made on each of the items. So that's one of our core recommendations. On the issue of investing in foster carers, and specifically around housing and perhaps increasing the size of housing, we felt it was very important to, of course, think very carefully about the use of public funds and make sure that adequate, and we recommend to Cabinet that you reassure yourselves that the adequate processes, legal processes are there in place to protect the public purse. On the proposal for a family centre, we welcomed, again, bringing a service into the authority and investing in our staff, but we felt very strongly that there's an important dimension around the quality of that service, since it will fail if that quality isn't maintained. So again, we strongly recommend that Cabinet reassures itself that the processes are there in place to ensure that a quality service is being delivered. On the Edge of Care service, there was some concern that perhaps on that proposal, after a short period of time, people in receipt of that service might well feel that they are being left or cut away. We were reassured on that matter, but we still feel that Cabinet should reassure itself that there is an offer that covers that period once people come out of that service, and that there is a step down for them, so that they're not left floating after a short period of intense intervention. There are a couple of items that we did have concerns around and that we didn't feel we had, it's important to say, we didn't have as fuller information as we would have liked when we discussed these matters. One was the pause programme. We still have some questions around whether or not it will achieve what we want for the individuals. And, of course, if we don't achieve that, then we won't achieve the target and we certainly won't achieve the saving. But primarily our concern was around the ethics of that service, and also the result of the intervention, since further documentation that we've seen since from officers, it is unclear as to what the outcomes will be for women entering that programme. So again, we feel Cabinet should reassure itself that we've covered the ethical and human rights bases, and that we feel that that programme will deliver what we expect it to. And finally, around the SEN and transport, we felt very strongly that the voice of users should be at the heart of that process, and that we should be co-designing, where possible, that service and thinking very carefully about how we take that service forward. And we had some very strong concerns around the outsourcing of that contract, and in particular using an outside provider who might, after a period of time, vanish. And so we also strongly recommend that Cabinet reassures itself that this is the only way that we can do it, that there isn't a more feasible way that we could bring that service in-house, and that we do need that external expertise, and that we take note to the contract management needs and issues that we might have around taking that piece of work forward. And that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Das Neves. Councillor Brabazon.
I'd just like to say I think it was a really good process, that we were questioned about the substance of these bids, and I think it was a salutary process, and I hope all my colleagues will be looking forward to having their Invest to Save bids scrutinised by the overview and scrutiny. I'm also pleased to say that Children's are first off the starting block in putting forward a series of Invest to Save bids, and have come up with what I can say and would commend to the Cabinet as a very creative set of proposals which tackle some of the endemic problems that the service faces. So, in response to your recommendations, I welcome all of them, really. I think on behalf of the service we would welcome them. I would like to say a couple of words in response to the points you raised, if that's okay, Chair. Okay. With regard to the Family Centre, this is for benefit of colleagues and anybody who is listening, that this is not a model that is new. This is a well-established model for dealing with people, mothers, where their children are likely to be taken into care if there isn't a process of early intervention. Care proceedings are hugely expensive, hugely difficult for the families, and it's good practice, if we can, to do everything we can to avoid care proceedings. We currently have 424 children in care. A large proportion of those are under 5. We do not want young children being taken into care if that can be avoided. That is the point of this project. And every time you avoid taking a child into care, you're not helping the family and saving a lot of money. And this will provide in-house, through the borough, assessment support, care support, family support, wrapping it round the family, so that families, we do not have to take care proceedings. This is a well-established model, particularly drawing on Enfield's experience of been doing this for a very long time. and I think we heard at length from the officers, if members want more detail, I have the officers behind me. So this is a good news project, probably long overdue, and it's excellent that we're doing it. The financial investment for the foster carers will be starting with those foster carers who are tenants of homes for Haringey. So we will be investing in our own property for foster carers who are willing to take more children. Every time a child is in foster care and not in external foster care, but within our foster care, we save money and we build our own capacity. So that is an excellent project. The Mockingbird project, which I think we all agreed was good, is by having a super foster carer. So we have a cluster of foster carers supported by somebody very experienced who will be on our payroll. These are great ideas, and these are all, I like to use the word insourcing, Chair, insourcing projects. We aim through our programme to create 27 new jobs inside children's. The edge of care, the points you make are very accurate. It is very important there is follow-up, and I'm sure that we're going to take on board the process whereby the work done, the very serious levels of intervention with young people who may have to be taken into care if there isn't that intervention is sustained. So I think that's a point well made. Pools. I did ask for a bit more evidence on the pools programme. I can assure you, I have had a report, if I can find it, all these bits of paper, that pools is only, a woman would only enter that programme with informed consent. There is no way a woman would be forced into that programme. So the issues around the ethics, again, totally understood, but I do want to emphasise that point. It would be the woman's choice. What is important to understand about pools is that this is a programme where women who have had many children and lost them all to care. This is a programme targeted at the most vulnerable women who go to great lengths to have additional children because they have lost their children in the care system. What this means is, by working with these women, we'll be avoiding further children being taken into care. In a financially, at minimum, we estimate that even with in-house foster care, child in care to the age of 18 costs £432,000. So every time a child is not taken into care, what we want is these women to change their, to be helped to change their lives, so if they do have another child, they keep that child. Okay. That has to be the goal. The alternatives are very serious for those women. So we take, absolutely. Finally,
could you just kindly wrap up, please, Councillor, because we have a large agenda today.
Yes. Co-design, yes. Consultation, parental participation, consultation, parental steering support group, yes. In order to do that. And the scoping review by all means.
Okay, thank you very much for that, that clear position on where we are with the recommendations from scrutiny. Thank you very much for bringing them. Right, we will return to the recommendations on this item, item 28 of our agenda. Item 15, this is an update on the Council Housing Delivery Programme, pages 333 to 350. Councillor Ibrahim, if you could kindly introduce your report, please.
Thank you. I'd like to use this opportunity to politely contend with Councillor Brabazon that I think actually this is our biggest Invest to Save programme, but we're not just investing to save money. Investing in council homes and secure tenancies saves lives, and it produces stability and the security of tenure that our residents need in order to thrive in our borough. So what I'd like to do, and take this opportunity to use this update, is just to provide a update to colleagues and residents about where we are with our commitment to deliver 1,000 council homes. Sorry, I'm just conscious of something. Okay, sorry, I'll carry on. So this is an update on where we are with our with the challenging promise that we made to our borough to deliver 1,000 council homes by the end of this administration. So what we have to do in order to do that is recognise what the challenges are and what we need in order to deliver that. And there are three things: land, money and capacity. What this report does, and I'll refer you to the back of the report, which provides a list of the council-owned sites which are going to be in the first tranche of our delivery programme. I'm really pleased that we've started a process of meeting with ward councillors about the sites that are identified in their wards, and what's really useful is that dialogue. The first 3 meetings have already taken place, and obviously this is something that's going to be happening across the board. So in terms of land, that's where we are. Secondly, we need money. And what I'd really like to take the opportunity to do is remind ourselves of the huge help that the GLA has been in helping us with the big financial challenge that comes with building council homes. And earlier this year, actually it was late last year, we were really pleased to accept over £60 million of capital funding from the GLA. In this report, we're actually at a stage where we would like to accept a further £500,000 in investment in our ability to deliver. So that will be in our capacity. Finally, referring back to the last point, the third issue is capacity. And what we are making sure that we have is the right people and the right processes in order to deliver this programme. What I was really immensely proud of, actually, when I took over the brief, was the enthusiasm from council officers and actually other local authorities as well about the opportunity and the new conversation which is taking place around building council homes, which many local authorities have not done at this scale since the 1970s. So, again, I'm not going to deny it's going to be a huge challenge. We are effectively doing this from a standing start. Many local authorities are in this position as well. So, again, this report is an opportunity to give people an update about where we are and where we're heading over the next year. Would welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ibrahim. Do Cabinet colleagues have any questions on this report? Councillor Ball.
Yeah, I'd like to start off my question by thanking Councillor Ibrahim for setting up the meeting with White Hart Lane councillors earlier. It was really useful. Opportunity for colleagues to actually give officers some background information on some of the sites they're proposing and some historical context to help them with their deliberations. Can I ask whether there will be an opportunity for ward councillors to make further suggestions about other sites that may possibly exist that the council may or may not be aware of?
Absolutely, and that actually happens regularly. There are councillors who do send me information, in fact local activists as well, who may have an idea about a particular site which they're not sure if it's council owned or if it isn't. So what I tend to do is when people email me with those sites, if I don't see that they're already in our programme, I just pass them on to officers and they get back to me whether it's in the programme, whether it's going to be coming into the programme, etc. So that's certainly something that we welcome. But also, some of these sites, we've got to be clear, this is a consultation as well, so we will welcome opinion. So there are going to, and there are also going to be things that, sites that are identified, which we may later discover are not appropriate, which may come out of the programme, and then new sites will come in. That's why this is essentially a moving feast over the next couple of years.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ibrahim. Any other Cabinet members got any questions on this report? Any other councillors present got any questions on this report? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you. I wondered if we could have a quick update regarding the schedule at Broadwater Farms in terms of the decanting of Tangmere and Northolt, consulting on the plans for the new buildings and the demolition of the existing ones. Also, when Labour included the 1,000 council homes target in its local manifesto, it did so in a paragraph that stated that it would be done by building council homes on council land. Given this, do you think that some people might feel cheated to discover that such a large chunk of these homes will actually be bought from private developers and built on private land? And finally, obviously there's proposals for lots of housing delivery, not just 1,000 council homes, and these are going ahead across Haringey with sites being identified. What assurances can you give that meaningful consultation with the local communities will take place about these sites, given that there is possibly a lack of trust based on previous consultations that have occurred?
So I'll try to answer part of that, because that's essentially a lot of questions in one. So when you specifically talk about the acquisition of homes from developers on private land, I'm not sure I would feel cheated around the municipalisation of private land, actually. I'd quite like to see it going that way. I'd like to see more private land coming into the public sector. So it shouldn't always be the other way. So I know there are lots of questions that are being asked about where we own the land, and there is potentially, and that will come up later when we discuss another item. But in terms of municipalising private land, I'm not sure I'd feel cheated. I think that's the direction that things. So in a perfect world, I would like to see all public land remain public, and actually more land which is in the private sector become public, which means that when we purchase sites like Plevna Crescent, for example, that's private site that obviously will now be in public ownership. So obviously we have to pay for that. It doesn't come free. So, I mean, I'm not sure that there is a magic wand that makes building council homes cheap. We know that it's not cheap. What we are in a better position is with the lifting of the HRA borrowing cap, we are in a position where we can actually invest in those homes. And just to be clear, there is a clear benchmark with the GLA around when those types of homes present value for money. So we have to go according to those guidance, and every type of a deal like this has to go through an internal best value, best consideration process, and we would never make decisions that are not based on that. If officers have anything else to add. Oh, on Broadwater Farm, you asked about where we are with the decant. So I don't think there's anybody from Homes for Haringey here this evening, but my understanding is that we have decanted all our tenants, but we are obviously currently in a negotiation process with some leaseholders. I could be wrong on that, because I know that there was a resident that we were still trying to find an appropriate home for, but that was some time ago, and my understanding is that we are currently just in negotiation with some leaseholders.
And it was just about the consultation side as well. I don't think you covered that. Across the piece where land is being acquired or being developed that hadn't previously been.
So obviously the document that we've provided around our programme is now public, so it will be part of a public conversation that's going to be taking place now that we're consulting with ward councillors. So you'll see that all of the sites cover the majority of the wards in the borough. I don't think every single ward is in there, but again, in terms of the specifics around public consultation, I'll refer that to officers.
Yeah, that's right. So if I interpret your question right, Councillor, it kind of goes beyond the council house building programme and is about kind of consultation on housing sites more generally in the borough. So it's obviously the case that any any proposal that comes forward to development on any site is subject to consultation through the development control, the planning process. The other really important thing to say is that we are shortly to embark on a review of our local plan, which includes a review of all of the sites that are allocated for housing in our planning policy. So before proposals actually come forward, they're the sites that we are saying we think are right for new housing development in the borough. And the development of the local plan comes with its own statutory requirement to consult, and obviously we'll be doing everything we can to make that as meaningful as possible so that sites that are being either kind of re-identified, things that are already in our local plan but that we still think should be coming forward for housing, and new sites that are being identified that aren't in the current plan are subject to that. The local plan gives us a real opportunity to get out there and engage with residents and test kind of our ambitions for those sites against the ambitions they have themselves. And of course that process may, in the same way that Councillor Bull was referring to in relation to it may flush out ideas from the community about further sites which they would want to see in the plan. But the plan gives us a real opportunity to get out there and get stuck into this question, which is certainly one of the reasons why we're keen to pursue it as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think I saw Councillor Davis.
Yes, it's two questions that I was going to ask on another item, but they belong here. How soon, we asked about capacity, there wasn't a real answer. How soon will Haringey have the capacity to deliver projects of the size of the Red House development using in-house teams so that we don't get any further outsourcing like there's going on at the Red House and Argent related? And how many architects, designers, surveyors and building project managers have we taken on in the last 14 months to deliver our housing projects ourselves?
Sorry, you said we asked about capacity but didn't get an answer. When? Oh, sorry. Did you ask about capacity? No. Who asked the question before? Okay, sorry, because you said it was asked and it wasn't answered, that's why. So, yes. So, obviously, I gave a bit of an overview on the capacity challenges and spoke briefly about what we're doing in terms of recruiting our capacity to deliver. But in terms of the specifics on the recruitment, I can refer that to Dan, who can answer that in more detail. I'm just conscious that I didn't realise it'd been asked earlier.
The reason that proposals for the Red House have come forward in the way they have, the reasons that the proposals for Tottenham Hale came forward in the way they have, is not because the council lacks the capacity to deliver on those sites. It's because of very specific kind of factors related to those sites, either because there are other land holdings in third-party control, or there are big mixed-use developments which aren't just housing, which is where the council's core competency is developing. So the size is not the issue with the Red House, it's the particular nature of the kind of land ownerships and the proposals for the scheme that is the constraint. And the council certainly has the capacity to develop sites, and indeed is bringing forward sites that are bigger than that, where the land ownerships are less complex. In terms of specific numbers of recruitment, now Alan can probably answer some questions specifically about recruitment recently into that kind of core project management function which you asked, and I'll ask him to do that in a moment, in the housing team itself. I think you were asking kind of more widely also about the kind of supporting professions of, I've written down properties, surveyors, designers, architects. We do have a small kind of in-house design function, although to be honest, that is principally about helping us client the design work that we commission rather than doing design. So to be absolutely clear, at the moment at least, the design work on the council housing programme is being done by designers whose services we are buying in. That's not been our priority in the first wave of recruitment. Our first wave of recruitment is to get the project management skills into the core housing team, which Alan will talk about in a minute. We're also I'm doing a review of our property team precisely because I'm not quite sure that we're set up to do a range of things we need to do across property. So I think there'll be more to come soon on kind of surveyors and the professional quality property profession, although we haven't brought anyone new in specifically to work on this programme in the last 40 months. But I'll let Alan talk about recent recruitment to the core team.
Thank you. We're just onboarding a whole bunch of people we just recruited. We recruited 12 posts for the housing development team. They do actually include people who were architects and surveyors and designers in their former careers, but not been taken on to be architects, designers and surveyors. They're taken on to be project managers to deliver. As Dan was saying, we will commission those services from external consultants, as you would do, as all housing associations and local authorities do. We don't build our own architects department now. In the future, if we start delivering 1,000 homes every year rather than over 4 years, you might want to have an architects department, but that is a thing of the past. So currently, as I say, we're taking on 12 people. That will give us a team of about 18, many of whom have been, over half of whom have been delivering significant numbers of affordable homes in the housing association sector, so it's a very experienced team. But we're also growing some of our own staff, developing internal staff to give them project management skills, because in the end, every local authority in London is trying to develop this capacity at the same time. We can't all compete for the same staff. We all need to some extent grow our own. And there is a limit to how many you can take on in one go. I'd like to have taken on a few more, but actually 12 is quite a lot to onboard in one go. It's a big bite, and we'll probably go back into the market in another 6 months or so and try and take on more as more schemes come forward.
Sorry, Councillor, I'm not going to take a follow-up on this. However, I think in the medium term, yes, we will be delivering those functions in-house, and we'll be moving in that direction. So if that's the follow-up question you asked, that is where we're heading. But I'm not taking a follow-up question on this. I'm sorry. Any other questions on this report? Right. Okay. If we turn to page 334, the recommendations are at paragraph 3.1a to 3.1e. Can we agree those? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item number 16, which is the Local Flood Risk Management Strategy, LFRMS, pages 351 to 356. Now, we were going to have Councillor Chandwani introduce this, but instead we decided we're going to get Councillor Hearn to bring it on board. So, Councillor Hearn, could you introduce your report, please?
Thanks very much. Okay, so, oops. Sorry, my computer's just gone funny. Hang on. Okay, so this report asks to adopt the Haringey's local flood risk management strategy. We have a duty to produce a flood management strategy and to publicise it. It explains how we manage or intend to manage flooding from surface water, drains, road water, groundwater and underground rivers. Like a lot of London, we've got lots of hidden water around the place. As part of our boroughs on a floodplain, it is more prone to flooding than other parts that perhaps are on hills. The important thing is to assess flood risks and put in place measures to prevent them as far as we can. We have to identify a budget to pay for it and to work with partners, residents and organisations on our plans. That's it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hearn. Any Cabinet members got any questions on this report? Councillor Brabazon.
Couple of questions. The first one is, when you're talking about drainage, in the plan, are there going to be, or are there, is there clarity about how to deal with the businesses, the issue about putting fat down the drains, which of course causes all the water to back up and is a big problem in a lot of local streets with drains being clogged up, and also the clearance of drains, which is an ongoing problem. The other question I wanted to ask you is, it says here in the appendix about sources of funding, and it mentions local levy. Is that a different levy from the SIL, or is it the sill? I'm particularly exercised to ask this because, of course, Tottenham Hale, where we're having these massive towers being built as I speak, is a floodplain. I'm sure that was done in the planning stuff. However, it does raise concerns around these huge towers on what is clearly a floodplain.
Councillor Hearn.
I'd like to ask Peter Boddy to help with the technicals here, please.
Certainly, Councillor. The two questions there, the back down drains. The strategy of the floodwater management strategy sets high-level aspirations, so it basically identifies that we will maintain our assets. Specific issues of businesses pouring back down drains isn't covered in detail in the report because it would be a highways enforcement action. The study shows that we have a cyclic gully cleansing initiative. We cleanse it. That will identify the problems. The strategy itself doesn't say how we'll then action it, but that would then go to our highways enforcement team. We would unblock it, but we would send highways enforcement in to take enforcement action on the businesses that were undertaking that. Regards to the local levy, no, that isn't the SIL-related funding. Local levy is funding that all members of the Thames Regional Flood Authority contribute an annual amount into as a group help develop and promote schemes. So Haringey itself contributes, I think, in the order of £100,000, as do each of all the other partners, and that is then used to deliver projects that benefit the whole of the Thames area. But no, it's separate to SIL.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other Cabinet members? Okay, no. Councillor Das Neves.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if you could say a little bit about how we are making sure that we're integrating our strategy with the new developments that are taking place and will take place across the borough. That's my first question. My second one is, I'm really pleased to see at page 353, 6.6, that in the strategy we are focusing on communicating with residents and increasing the knowledge and awareness of our flood strategy and the issues that it's aiming to tackle. I'm pretty sure very few people know that there's a sustainable drainage system opposite the Civic Centre, and some in the room will know that I've lobbied heavily for us to communicate well about what we're doing and why, and many residents who do know about it are very supportive. But I wonder how many people, if we have the facts on how many people replied to our consultation on sustainable, on local flood risk and that sort of sustainable aspect, and what we feel we can do to increase our engagement in these issues.
There's a planning question. If one could ask one of the planning officers to assist on that first one, and the second one about consultation. Somebody do that one as well.
Okay, we'll start off with Peter, then we'll go over to Emma.
Sorry, although I'm happy to have a go at the planning bit, and then Emma can decide if she needs to add further element. As part of our local flood risk management strategy, we have developed a SUDS design guide, basically, which are standards that Haringey require any developer to undertake. We have an officer who works within the drainage team, basically, who does SUDS-related planning comments. So every planning application that comes in is assessed to require whether it meets our flood risk management strategy, what sustainable drainage arrangements they have into that, and obligations are set, therefore, through the planning process to make sure that they are not discharging any water out of the development, or the development's not creating any water and putting it into the existing system. So that's fairly well covered, and that's referred to in the strategy, and we have parallel documents that set those standards. In regards to the community engagement, that is a key driver of the strategy. It's about how we publicise what we're doing about flooding, but also how the community can become involved with that. And we are certainly working as part of the individual schemes that we're developing to try and do wider promotion and do events with the Crescent Garden works that recently referred to. We've actually been working with schools, and we actually had a model made up, and we went into schools, and so they understood what we were trying to achieve, and they actually arranged visits, and we had people to come and discuss with them. So, So we are trying to do more to engage with the community because it's important they understand what happens in these events.
To be honest, I think Peter pretty much answered the question, but just to add to that, very large major applications also have their own environmental impact assessments, which includes flooding, and so, as Peter said, these matters are very much thoroughly assessed through the process.
Okay, thank you. Sorry?
Question about how many people responded to the consultation.
Oh. Does anybody know? Can we treat that as a written response? You get a written response to that, unless you know now. Do you know?
I do. It's actually in the report. It's 15, which were largely other authorities, the Environment Agency and Thames, which was consistent with the responses other authorities received.
Okay, thank you very much. Right. Okay. The recommendations for this report are on page 351. They are at paragraphs 3.1 to 3.3. Can we agree these? Agreed? Lovely. Thank you very much. 17. The expansion of car clubs. This is on page 367 to 380 of your pack. Councillor Hearn. Could you kindly introduce your report?
Thanks. Some of you may know I'm on a one-woman trip to try and stop people driving in this borough, but I do recognise that it's actually important to have access to cars for particular times and circumstances. So car clubs is a very good way to do that. And we've had a trial with Drive Now, which has been quite successful. We proposed to enter into contract with them and Zipcar to provide a little bit of competition to provide cars which can be used as and when you need them. It involves the use of lovely apps. The cars themselves, many of them are hybrid, and we have some electric cars in those fleets as well. So that helps. I would not say that driving the car is a solution to our climate change problems, but something that may be necessary to do for particular circumstances. And hopefully this scheme will encourage people to begin to let go of their rather expensive cars, which sit outside of their houses and flats 9/10 of the time, and to go for this to help the planet and each other.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hearn. Any Council Cabinet colleagues have any questions on this report? Any other councillors present have any questions on this report? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you. Councillor Hearn, just wanted to ask around the climate emergency, and 15% of car club vehicles are electric. So why are we putting more of these polluting vehicles on our roads rather than insisting they use a 100% electric fleet? Secondly, the report talks about congestion and clustering as an issue, but doesn't really give any ideas for mitigation. So if someone lives in a residential area near a train or a tube station and pays for a permit, what will the council do to make sure car clubs don't prevent them working near their not working near their home? And finally, given the council's desire to encourage active travel and discourage car use, why is a contract being agreed for floating cars when one hasn't yet been delivered for dockless bikes?
Councillor Hearn.
So I'm going to ask Neil Goldberg to answer the technical things. I'll come back with the political ones. I'm going to answer the question on the electric vehicles and then pass the rest of it to Neil, if that's okay. So on the electric vehicles, we would obviously like there to be a higher proportion. There isn't a provider that can actually do that for us at the moment, which is why we're suggesting what's in the Cabinet report. Within the contract, it's set out for the fleet to be fully electric by 2023, and it has been going up over time. I'm going to pass over to Neil for the rest of it.
So on the point raised around clustering and congestion, it's completely up to the council to decide the operating area for both car clubs. The way it works at the moment with Drive Now is there, within the app itself, there are places in the borough where a user cannot physically lock the car, i.e. they can't end the journey, and it's within those locations that are the most sensitive. So the main roads, for example, users aren't able to end their journey during match days within the Tottenham match day CPZ, and there's a small area around Stroud Green Road during Finsbury Park events that people aren't able to end their journeys as well. Anybody can raise this with us. We actually don't receive many complaints on our Drive Now operation at the moment, which is one of the reasons why we've considered it to be successful. I know there's been some concerns around Highgate Station and clustering, and Drive Now have been in contact with the residents' associations and have made part of the road a no parking area. There has to be a balance raised and questioned as to whether the outcome should be the banning of cars parking in certain areas, or whether we can work with the car clubs to encourage them to stop clustering. So they are required to manage their car clubs to make sure that there's not an over-concentration of their cars in any one area. I would caution against banning areas unless it's a significant concern, and go towards the approach of encouraging the car clubs to better manage their cars, and we can certainly do that through the contract. Just want to pick up the issue around why are we doing floating car clubs now and not dockless. Floating car club has come forward now because Drive Now contract does need renewing at this precise moment in time, and therefore we're opening it up to competition, as we've always said to other operators. Should there be any other operators, then now be the time to do it. The issue around dockless is we are still in contact with the dockless providers. Our position at the moment is that we're working with Hackney and Islington to find out how it's operating in the boroughs. There is a small resource implication of introducing the dockless into Haringey from an officer perspective, but going forward we have prioritised that in the borough plan, and it's something that will shortly come out in the cycling and walking action plan, which is hopefully going to be later released and reported to Cabinet later in the year, and is also a commitment in the local implementation plan. So the commitment's there. We're just waiting to see how it's operating elsewhere before we launch into a trial.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions by anybody on this report? That's a no. Right, if we turn to pages 368 and 369 of your pack, the recommendations are paragraphs 3.1.1 and 3.1.2. Can we agree that, please? Is that agreed? Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Right, 18, adoption of conservation area, appraisal and management plans for Bruce Castle, Tottenham Cemetery, Tower Gardens and Peabody Cottages. This is on pages 381 to 642 of your pack. Councillor Hearn, could you kindly introduce your report, please?
Okay, so we've been out for consultation on these, and these have been revised as a result of that consultation. And the purpose, obviously, of these conservation area plans is to ensure that anything that happens in there is suitable for to preserve historic and natural areas of buildings and things like that. So, and these actually do give some detail of what you can and can't do in the areas, and it's there to help people making changes to dwelling places, to people developing and converting premises as well, to ensure that we don't lose the important historic aspects of the buildings. We do actually have a number of really good conservation areas, and they are well worth protecting, which is why we do this.
Oops. Okay, thank you very much. Any Cabinet colleagues have any questions on this report? Any councillors present have any questions on this report? Right. Okay. If we turn to page 38. Oh, yes. No, not really, but I will.
If we could kindly note the comments and the endorsements to the report, the recommendation from the Regulatory Committee, which are set out in the addendum, and which are set out in the addendum, which was on your desk. And now, can we agree the recommendations as at paragraphs 3.1, subsections 1 to 4? Can we agree these? Are these agreed? Agreed? I think we're wavering a little bit, so a little bit extra energy. I know it's quarter to 9. We're going to do magic fingers in a little while, guys. So, okay, item 19. Estate control part. Sorry, item 19. Councillor Chandwani.
Chair, I'd like to declare an interest in a leaseholder at Homes for Haringey.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ball.
Yes, so am I. And thank the court with one of the estates that's been consulted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 19. This is estate control parking scheme renewal. It's approval to undertake a formal consultation. This is on pages 643 to 662 of your pack. Councillor Ibrahim, could you kindly introduce your report, please?
Thank you, Councillor Ejiofor. So, Cabinet comrades, I am very proud to introduce this report because it's a project that's designed to bring in-house a service. And many of you may not know that our estate's parking is currently outsourced, but also many of you will know that we're one of, I think, the only borough in London that has not outsourced our parking service. Yeah. So this is a quick win. Actually, this is a situation in which we currently have the capacity, which is something we know how to run and we've got experience of running. So why not look at bringing it back in-house? Also, it's not just about bringing it back in-house. It's a service that's really important actually to our residents, and it's really important to the residents who live on estates which are owned and run by Homes for Haringey. What we know is that the current system of controlling estate parking is ineffective. We know that, residents tell us that, and it's not fair that residents are subsidising a poor service which many of them are not even using. So it's therefore right that we ask Homes for Haringey, who is our housing management provider, to look at delivering an improved service to our residents who are entitled to the best possible value for money that we can provide. So this is going to be an important step to demonstrating to our residents that we're really serious about services which they subsidise and we provide. And this will be across our 280 estates. Improved parking controls will ensure that those estate residents who need it the most will get the benefit of the available parking, especially those who are the most vulnerable. And we know across the board that that's not currently happening. A new estate parking management scheme will provide the powers and the income that we need to achieve our wider strategic aims in promoting active travel choices, reducing the use of carbon-emitting vehicles, and achieving a shift towards other digital options. So, all in all, I think once we've started this consultation process, we will have a better picture across the board of what suits each of those estates. And we are not going to be taking a one-size-fits-all approach. We recognise that each estate has unique circumstances and unique challenges, and this is the start of the process about which we are very, very proud to be going forward with. And these are the types of things that we promised residents that we would look at.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Ibrahim. Any Cabinet colleagues got any questions on this report? Any other councillors present got any questions on this report? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you. I feel like we talk a lot, Councillor Ibrahim. on the new scheme, when will that be in place, and therefore what are the total estimated losses of the current scheme to the council? Given the difficulties residents have had with getting their street parking permits, can we be confident, that's online, can we be confident that the residents on the various estates won't face the same problem? And finally, with this review, will the council commit to reviewing cycle parking on the estates as well to bring them in line with new development requirements and then promote active travel while discouraging car use?
So the last part of it I agree with, Councillor Ball. It's a very good question, and absolutely, I mean, this should be an all-encompassing review. In terms of the financials and the specifics around the numbers, I can get you a written response from that. I'm just conscious that there isn't anybody from Homes for Haringey here tonight who will probably have those answers. In terms of your other questions, can I say absolutely that this is going to be plain sailing? No, but that shouldn't be why we shouldn't do it, and we have to start somewhere. This is why we have to initiate this process, because we know that across the borough it's a completely mixed bag of what different people's experiences are. I know, for example, the challenges, you know, off the top of my head, on Broadwater Farm are vastly different to what the challenges are going to be on Chettle Court. One of the many complaints that come into me is around abandoned vehicles on estates and the challenges we face in getting those removed. What we also have a huge problem with is the enforcement of parking on estates, and yeah, absolutely take on board everything you're saying. In terms of the technical stuff, I don't know if any of the officers here can answer any of that, but my guess would be we would want a more specific written response from Homes for Haringey.
I said, whilst we're here, we have a new attendee to Cabinet, all right? So you're not going to get here and come here for a free cup of coffee and do nothing, all right? So I'd just like to see whether Sandra has anything to add to this.
Thank you. I'm a relatively new member of the team, so I haven't met everyone, so that's fine. In terms of the proposals for going live with the new scheme, the intention, subject to the outcome of the consultation, is to pilot the scheme. We're hoping that pilot would go live in July of 2020, and subject to any learning from that, the intention is to roll the new scheme out by the end of the financial year 2021-22, so by March 2022. In terms of the question in relation to losses, the report details the financial position over the last 4 years to the end of March 2019. What you'll see from that is that we started that period, so by March, at the year ending March 2016, we were still generating a surplus from the scheme of around just over £44,000. That reduced in 2016-17, and in the last 2 financial years included in the report, the scheme is generating a surplus, a deficit. We anticipate that deficit will continue until the new scheme is fully rolled out. So I can't give you a forecast of what that's likely to be, but I think the performance over the last 2 years, ending March 2019, give you a sense of the level of deficit that we're currently running.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, if we can turn to page 644 of our pack, the recommendations here are paragraphs 3.1 to 3.4. Can we agree these? Agreed. Lovely, thank you very much. Item 20. Bed-based intermediate care nursing home beds. This is on pages 663 to 672 of your report. This report also has exempt information which we will consider in the private part of this meeting. Therefore, we can discuss the recommendations that set out in section 3, subject to considering the exempt information at item 29. So, Councillor James, could you kindly introduce this report, please? Sandra, you need to turn your mic off, unless you're still talking.
Thanks. Yeah, this report is about the provision of intermediate care beds through a block grant, a block contract. Intermediate care beds help to alleviate the issue of delayed hospital discharges and inappropriate admissions that can lead to lengthy stays in hospital. The use of a block contract for 10 intermediate care beds will help to plan care more efficiently and more effectively, and it will also help to avoid unnecessary hospital stays. In turn, this will help for residents to remain and regain independence quicker, and therefore I commend this report to you.
Thank you very much. Any questions on the open part of the report from Cabinet? Any questions on the open part of the report from other councillors? Okay, we're going to return to these recommendations, items 29, in the private part of this meeting. 21, Templeton Hall. Templeton Hall and Garage Site Redevelopment Construction Contract Award to develop 11 council-rented homes, as in council homes, at council rents. This report has exempt information which we'll consider in the private part of this meeting, so therefore we can consider recommendations as set out in section 3, subject to considering exempt information at item 30, but we will discuss the public part after Councillor Ibrahim has introduced her report.
So I'm going to try and be as brief as possible because I'm conscious of the time, but many of you will have seen the hoardings that have gone up around this particular site, and I've also seen a number of questions that have arisen about when this site was approved. It's absolutely right. This site was identified for housing in 2017, but it was part of the programme of infill sites which we'd decided at that time, the previous administration had decided to give to sanctuary housing, and the majority of those homes would have been, I think entirely on this site, would have been at shared ownership. So I'm proud to say that we've brought that back in, and we will be delivering council homes at council rents on that site ourselves. So what this report is our first important milestone in terms of delivering our direct council home delivery programme.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any Cabinet members got any questions on this report? Any other councillors present got any questions on this report? Okay, then we will consider this when we return to this at item number 30. Right, agenda item number 22, Red House Yard, 432 West Green Road, N15. This is on pages 679 to 694 of your pack. This report also has exempt information which we will consider in the private part of the meeting. Therefore, we will consider the recommendations as set out in section 3, subject to considering exempt information at item 31, and we're able to discuss the public information in the public part of this meeting. Councillor Ajay, could you kindly introduce the open part of this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The report seeks approval to revise the terms previously agreed by Cabinet in February 2013 and February 2015 to enable the acquisition by the Council of homes within the proposed redevelopment for retention as social rented freehold council housing, with the associated creation of public open space and enhanced community buildings on the site. The social housing will count towards the Council's priority of 1,000 homes over the borough plan period. It meets with and is in compliance with the Council's budget and policy framework as set out in Part 4, Section E of the Constitution, and the housing funding element that has been through the budget setting process and approved by the Council in February 2019. The revised terms are in accordance with the benchmarks for affordable housing provision and supported by the Mayor of London Affordable Housing Programme grant. It also meets with the Mayor's London Plan for housing supply targets within the borough. The terms also allow the council to share profit known as overage from the private element of the scheme if it exceeds sale prices assumed in the planning viability study. The revised terms, revised arrangements rather, will also help to tackle the housing land waiting lists and create savings in the cost of providing temporary accommodation to families, as well as assist in tackling homelessness in the borough. As previously stated, these there are, in terms of the terms that have been agreed, these are laid down in part 2 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ajay. Any Cabinet member got any questions on this report? Okay, any other members present got any questions on this report? Okay, I'll take the person who hasn't asked a question yet. Councillor Gordon, please come up first. If you can ask your 3 questions, and you'll get 3 pithy responses.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is about how quickly we think these homes could be built, because I seem to think that's one of the arguments that has been put. Councillor Adjei, you said in your remarks that this is sort of renewing an agreement. My understanding was that the agreement had actually lapsed because Paul Smith Magic Homes hadn't got their planning permission previously, so that we were sort of starting again from scratch on this, and that there was no previous agreement that we had obligations for, but maybe you could clarify that matter. That's just a question of clarification. My question is about the speed. Given that Paul Simon Magic Homes has been rather tardy in the past in any agreement that it's come up with, then I wanted to know whether all the full options on our own self-build had been thoroughly explored. And given that Mr Hawthorne had just said in his earlier remarks that on the Red House it wasn't a question of capacity, but just on the question of negotiating with the church or pub, that was the problem and not a question of our own capacity. I'd like you to comment on that. And on the question of, I don't know if this is for yourself or for officers, but whether there's any obligation that we've got with this particular developer about when they will put obligations to proceed rather than land banking or indeed selling the land on to another developer, and also about the land, any land receipts that we're going to get. I don't know if the figure is in the public papers or not about the land receipts. I won't quote what I think it is then. In that case, but I want to know whether we're satisfied that the land receipt that we will get is of good value, given that now it's got planning permission, and presumably that means it increases the land value of that. And my last question is about the unit price that we'll be paying. We'll be putting in £15 million worth of public money into this scheme, which works out, on my reckoning, about £330,000 per unit, which is much the same price that was in Tottenham, on the Tottenham Hale development by Argent. Again, only one developer involved there. We had a previous agreement in that case. Here again, one developer, and I'd like assurances that all due diligence has been made, that we've not gone out to procurement on this, and that we've only dealing with the one developer, and that 330,000 per unit is good value for money for an average of 2-bedroom flats.
Great, thank you. In terms of how quickly these will be built, I am informed, and I think it's in the open part of the report, that this will be done within the lifetime of this administration, which is by 2022. That's my understanding. In terms of the renewing the agreement or revised terms, as far as I'm aware, these the terms to revise so that we are able to acquire the 46 housing social rent with the freehold, because my understanding is that the previous scheme didn't allow for that 25. I think it was only 25 or less. 30. Yeah, 30. Well,
of shared ownership.
Of shared, well, but this revised scheme enables the council to acquire 46 homes on social rented. Officers can qualify or deal with that aspect in terms of the technical bit. The issue of land banking, I'm not aware of any land banking in this situation. I am aware of land assembly, which, again, officers can pick up. In terms of the value of the land, I am informed that given that the council is looking at this arrangement, the value that officers and the organization has agreed, it's normally the case that if you're putting social housing on a site, it brings the value down. So that's that. On the issue of procurement, that is in the exempt part of the report, so I can't comment on that.
Councillor Davis. Sorry, Councillor Davis. They will do leading up to the end of this part. Councillor Davis.
Yes, I've got two questions. Hadn't planning permission for the original development expired last September? So really, whatever was in that proposal is irrelevant. It was developed under the previous administration, and it had died a death in September, and the land reverted to us. So I'm not sure that are you sure that the new proposals have got anything to do with the old ones? And secondly, I just wanted to read to you from what it says in yesterday's report that went to planning. Under 6.6.38, it said, public pedestrian routes through the site would be possible during daylight hours, although these routes would be closed off by gate during the night. And when we had a look at the plans, there are quite high gates in the middle of this development that turn it into a gated estate after darkness. And under questioning, when we were talking to the developer last night, we were told that this was in case there was any trouble kicked off or there was antisocial behaviour. And aren't you worried, as a cabinet, about the message that gives out about the way that Tottenham people and Tottenham development is regarded? Because it wouldn't be there in a Muswell Hill proposal. And I just wanted to say on that that's also borne out by the fact that this report refers to Red House Yard all the way through. It's called the Red House. Getting the name of it right is actually quite important.
Thank you. In terms of the, in fact, both those technical matters, I would refer to officers on that, because I'm new to this portfolio in terms of the house property bit. I have done as much as I can in terms of the report that I've picked up. So those technical aspects, I will get officers to deal with that, especially the planning aspect. Thanks.
Dan, when you take this, if there's anything wrapped up from Councillor Gordon's question, if you could address that as well, yeah?
Starting with Councillor Davis's questions, maybe. So the old scheme didn't. I think I'm right in saying the old scheme didn't ever have planning consent. What had expired was the agreement between the council and Paul Simon Magic Homes for the disposal of the land. That's what had expired, and that's what needed to be renewed. But it's correct to say that had expired. On the public pedestrian routes being closed during the night, I think I'm right in saying that it's clear that is possible if that's what the police require, but that's effectively at the police's discretion. So that's not a kind of council decision. It will be based on police advice. I'm just looking through Councillor Gordon's questions on the question of the risk of land banking or the land being sold on after the disposal. So the terms on which the council agrees to sell the land can include terms that will prevent either of those things happening by having long stop dates and by binding the developer to develop itself. So I'm reasonably confident I'm confident we can cover that off. And the other thing that's worth saying is that every disposal that the council of land that the council makes, it's kind of legally obliged to get what's called best consideration for the land. So to get a kind of surveyor-approved report which says that, that based on the use that's going to be made of the land and the value of the land, that the price that the council disposes of it is kind of the best use of public resources. And so we are confident that, as Councillor Ajay says, given what's now being developed on the land in terms of the proportion and the type of affordable housing, that the price that the council is selling the land for is the appropriate price and is the best consideration for the council in making that disposal.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I think Dan in part has answered my question. Given that this site involves a transfer of land to a developer, how have we ensured that we're getting the best value, and I mean that in the most global sense, on this deal? Because obviously for us it's about the public purse and it's about public land, so we should be making sure that we're getting that best value.
So I think I'm at risk of repeating pretty much the answer I just gave, but what we're doing is we're making two value calculations here. The first is the calculation we make about the appropriate price for us to sell the land to the developer at, and that land the value of that land can't be separated from kind of what the land will then be used for. So the calculation that we make with professional advice is given the amount and the tenure and therefore the value of the affordable homes that are being that will be built on that site and then sold back to us, the price that we're selling at is the kind of appropriate kind of value of that land given the value that land will have to the developer based on the obligations of what they're then obliged to build. And that is not a kind of that is a kind of professionalised piece of property advice that the council bases this decision on. Then of course there's another value consideration in this proposal, which is the value consideration about the cost at which we then buy the homes back into the council for use as council homes. And as Councillor Ajay says, we apply to that a kind of benchmark test, which tests the kind of affordability of those homes within the overall housing revenue account business plan, which effectively shows that the kind of rents that come in from homes can cover any capital costs associated with acquiring them. And we're satisfied that the price we've agreed to acquire those homes back at is within those benchmarks that we've set, not just for this site, but across our whole council housing delivery programme. So there are two value considerations that I think kind of add up to the answer to your question along those lines.
Okay. No, sorry. Councillor Barnes. Just ask all your questions at the same time, please.
Okay, thank you. In paragraph 5.4, there's a lot of speculation about the church and the pub objecting to a potential council-led development on the site. Have they actually indicated that that would be a problem for them, or is that conjecture? Has the council explored the possibility of retaining the land and leasing it to the developer so the land remains in council ownership but allows the developer to develop the entire site, so it may fall back into council hands in the future purely? And just on the point Councillor Davis raised about the gating and fencing of areas, that doesn't just keep people in, it also prevents people, it keeps people in, but it prevents people from getting out. I grew up in Salford, and that was a huge issue, and a lot of the gates came down around various communities, thankfully, and I think that should be reviewed.
Councillor Ajay, if you want to take any of those.
I mean, I can't really comment on the issue of speculation or conjecture. That's the report that officers have written. I think maybe the office can answer that aspect. In terms of the gating issues as well, again, I think a reply was given. Maybe the officer can also deal with that aspect.
Dan, Emma?
So on the gates, basically it was the secured by design Met Police who have said that they wanted the potential for that to be designed in, and it's a much better design solution if the gates are actually there, bespoke, kind of built into it from day one. It's not the intention to use them unless there actually is a problem. And just to clarify, this is also an approach that the Met has asked for in Wood Green, so it isn't just in Tottenham that they're asking for that, but it's not intended that that will be the kind of first port of call that it will actually happen, and it wouldn't be our preference, but we have policies to abide by in relation to secured by design, so that's the rationale.
Okay. I'm going to ask my colleague Steve Carr to answer the other two questions that Councillor Barnes asked.
Thanks. On the issue of the church and the pub, whether or not they would go with the council's development of the whole site, that is conjecture, but it's based upon long history of dialogue with the owners of the pub and the church, and their appetite for waiting for a council-led scheme to be put together as an alternative to the Paul Simon Magic Homes scheme, which their party is through development agreements with the main developer on the site. And the other issue, I think, was the comparison with us retaining the site and developing the whole site itself. It's felt that because the church has access rights over the car park and the owner of the pub has its own development interest, that we would put forward the alternative of us developing our own Red House site as opposed to the wider site and forming a joint venture. And that was the comparison we made with the proposal now from the developer, Paul Simon Magic Homes.
Sorry, the question was whether or not you could lease the land to the developer, not the...
Sorry, in terms of the leasing, we were restrained very much from, in terms of procurement policy and tendering policy. We'd have to treat this as a contract and go through the ODU processes, which would potentially have all sorts of constraints. We've got legal advice from a QC on the options, and this is treated as a straight land disposal as opposed to a procurement.
Councillor Ibrahim.
Sorry, just a quick point about the issue of the gating. So most of our council estates, lots of them have concierge services. So you would be able to get out. You just need a fob to get back in. So that's that's essentially what something like that looks like.
If you can hold your question to the exempt part of the report, if that's okay, yep? Right, okay. We will come back to this at item 31. Item number 23, Building and Property Management. This is on pages 695 to 702 of your report. We're going to be very brief introducing this one. Yes, it does. This is a report that has exempt information, which therefore we'll be considering the recommendations as set out in section 3, subject to considering the exempt information at item number 32. We can have a discussion about the public parts of this report in the public part of this meeting. In our manifesto, we said that we would consider bringing services back in-house where it was prudent to do so. I'm delighted that we can achieve this with the facilities management contract, improving the conditions of employment of around 100 staff and providing a better service at a lower cost. Right, do Cabinet member colleagues have any questions on the open part of this report? Any other councillors present have any questions on this report? Okay, that having been said, then we will return to the recommendations at this report at item 32. Item number 24, Highway and Street Lighting. Highway and Street Lighting term contracts. This is at pages 703 to 712 of your pack. This report also has exempt information which will be considered in the private part of this meeting. Therefore, we will consider the recommendations as set out in section 3, subject to considering the exempt information at item 33.
Councillor Chandwani, could you kindly introduce your report, please?
Thank you, Leader. Haringey is one of the best connected boroughs. Our highways and good quality street lighting helps make our community safer, reduce risks of crime, ensure we are energy efficient. It's our responsibility as a council to ensure we provide high quality and swift maintenance of our roads, pathways and lighting across the borough. The council has recently undertaken a procurement process in the form of 2 open tenders in relation to street lighting and highway services, the recommendations of which are set out in the report and will be discussed in Part B.
Any Cabinet members have any questions on this report? Any other councillors present have any questions on this report? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you. Sorry, are you supposed to be asking a question too? Oh. So the council's had significant issues in the past with contractors and services not being delivered to a satisfactory level, and ending the contract obviously comes at a significant cost to the council. And sometimes, notably with Ringway Jacobs, who provide street maintenance, are severely failing in their duties. So what clauses has the council put in place to ensure it will be able to terminate this contract early should the contractor fail to deliver the service to the standard expected of them? And the rollout of LED street lighting in Haringey would give significant revenue savings to the council and would help to tackle the climate emergency which was declared by this council recently. But only a small percentage of streetlights have been approved for the upgrade this year. So will this contract address that and take on a faster rollout of LED street lighting across the borough? Can we expect much bolder action on LED street lighting in this next year's budget?
Councillor Chandwani.
Can I just check with legal whether I can discuss that part of the contract?
If you, yes, you can discuss that bit of the contract, yeah.
Okay, in that part, can I refer that part to Barry or Stephen?
LED street lighting or the other part?
Just in very general terms of response.
Hi. So just in terms of the contract itself and the clauses that are in there, so there is a significant difference in terms of the clauses contained within the contract that we went out.
You're very, very faint. Could you get a little bit closer to that mic?
Yep. Sorry, is that better now? Yep. So the clauses in here are different from the current contract. There is an escalation process within the contract that could potentially lead to termination of the contract if the contractor fails to perform its duties under the contract.
Okay, Stephen.
In terms of the LED proposal, we actually are putting together a business case to look at rolling out LED across the whole borough, linking it back to obviously the carbon savings, but also savings in relation to energy cost and also maintenance cost. So we should be pulling that together in the next 3 or 4 months. On the back of that, we will be developing a proposal to come back to the Cabinet member and through the Cabinet. In terms of this contract, I think going forward, we will still have the proposal to use this contract, or if we decided to use an alternative contract, then we could do that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Tucker.
Chair, I've got several questions, so I presume the form is to do them all at once.
4 would be fine.
I'll see if I can turn them into 4 questions.
That would be good.
So, first of all, my first question is to clarify what we're actually doing here. And putting aside all the secret information that we're not allowed to know and whatever glitch is taking place that we're not allowed to know the nature of, in terms of the main highways contract, but what we presumably know in terms of the contract on street lighting is that we would be moving from a situation in which we can potentially insource the service. That's what we have currently via the low-hack contract that we have, without paying a penalty and giving a reasonable notice, say 6 months, once Haringey had built up the necessary capacity to run this service ourselves and had gone through the due diligence to ensure that it was going to be value for money to do so, we could actually bring the service back into our own hands at any time. Can I ask for confirmation that the new contract that's being offered to the top bidder will include a penalty clause which will make it punitive for the council to bring this contract in within a 4-year period? If so, that is tying the hands not only of this administration, because the new contract, I believe, would start in October, but it would go well beyond the life of this administration. So we would then be in a situation of having come to power on a manifesto that said where prudent we will bring services in-house, to actually taking a service which is potentially ripe for bringing it in-house and making it beyond the hands of the council, not just of this council, but a large part of the next council, to bring it in-house.
I'm just going to hold on to that when you come, that's question one. When you come to that, I'll ask Bernie whether or not that sits with the exempt or that sits in the open part. Okay, question two.
Okay, thank you. So, secondly, with reference to the reasons that we insource, can I ask for confirmation that it's not just about workforce conditions, although they're very important, pay, pensions, union rights, job security and accountability, but it's also to avoid some of the very negative aspects that come with procurement to private sector companies, which in the end are only interested in their bottom line, which is profit. So, coming with all of that, we have an enormous amount of secrecy, and we've got that tonight. Nobody here, apart from Cabinet members, is going to be allowed to know what takes place in the exempt item, and members of the public are not given this information. But we also have enormous failures. The reason we have Ringway Jacobs and Lohac is because prior to 2013, we were dissatisfied with the performance and the value for money of the previous contractor, which I believe was Volker Highways. And to solve that problem, we ended that contract and gave it to Ringway Jacobs. Now we're dissatisfied with Ringway Jacobs. They're not giving us enough value for money. The solution, the great solution, is that we end that contract and give it to another private sector firm. Isn't the problem not just one particular firm or one particular contract, but the entire privatisation and outsourcing agenda against which, apparently, on this issue, we're not just doing nothing, we're making it almost impossible for the council to bring this service back in-house.
Right, that will be the second question. That might just be a yes-no answer, but we'll go on for that.
May well be. My next question. The report mentions APSI once, in that it says of the APSI Highways group, none of them have the entirety of a street lighting and highways contract in-house. Doesn't mention the considerable number that have a good part of the contract, either highways maintenance or street lighting in-house. There might not be London local authorities, but it could also be argued that the reason why London local authorities haven't done this is that they are still in tow to the ideology, the neoliberal ideology, that says that the public sector cannot deliver things, when actually we know the history of private sector involvement in delivering public services is absolutely appalling. But what we do know also is that APSI was asked to come in to Haringey and asked to investigate and deliver a report into the feasibility of this contract, or parts of the contract, being brought in-house. And can I quote what APSI said?
Could you ask the question? Because
I am going to ask the question, why was this report...
Sorry, this would be question 3. So
this is question 3.
Could you ask the question,
I will ask it. And I'm going to ask why the following comments by APSI, which is, by the way, the most prestigious and leading organisation in the country on the issue of quality delivery of public services and on the issue of the feasibility of insourcing. When APSI was asked to come in a report, and APSI gave us their best person, who was not only a former local authority chief executive, but a leading expert on highways and street lighting, that report said, 2.43, it is entirely feasible for Haringey Council to develop and operate an in-sourced service for highways and street lighting. Why was that ignored?
Okay. And the fourth and final question...
No, I haven't finished, because there were a number of APSI...
Sorry, hold on.
Chair, APSI's report was ignored...
Councillor Tucker, with respect... Okay,
with respect, I will proceed.
As you've seen today's meeting, there are a number of people who would have loved to have had that amount of time to raise the questions that they wanted to raise. Hold on, okay? Right, they've all looked at the fact that we've got a big agenda today, right, and they've been concise in the questions that they've asked. Now, with respect, that's 3 questions, one more, and that will be, it will need to be short, it will need to be... Councillor Tucker, please, it will need to be shorter than the first 3.
It will be short. It will be short. Why was APSI's recommendation that the current procurement process be aborted, that Ringway Jacobs and Lohac be asked to continue the contract while we explore the possibilities for the service to be brought in-house, which, as they said, was entirely feasible? Why is that being ignored? And also, why are we all here? We are here because we had an agenda. It was part of my commitment to my residents, to our supporters and the community, that we'll be bringing services back in-house, running them for the people and not for private profit. That goes for every councillor in the Labour Party in this room, and we must hold to that commitment.
I think if you just wait for Councillor Chandwani to answer your questions, I think what the commitment was is that we would deliver services ourselves in-house where it's prudent to do so, where it doesn't impact upon service delivery, right, and where we have the capacity to do so. That's what our commitment was, not to in-source everything no matter what. Councillor Chandwani.
Thank you. Can I take this opportunity to say, Councillor Tucker, it's good to see you back in Cabinet. I want to start by answering your first question. Please bear with me, because this is my first procurement award contract. I'd like to thank you for making it quite exciting. I think after this it gets a bit boring. So the first one is, I guess your question is, how long would it take us to develop an in-house service? We're estimating between 2 and 3 years at least, and this is due to really understanding how to do this. The logistics, the type of staff we need, what equipment we need, what training we will need, etc., etc. In terms of what we're doing about it as an administration, and I guess that's quite a political question, one of the things that we did do is we did have a cabinet member for insourcing. I am deeply disappointed that we haven't been here at this stage, a year on after that, our first year of administration, where we can answer some of these questions. But we are where we are now. And where we are now is we have to think about whether we are going to make sure that our residents keep on with a low-hack contract that Councillor Barnes rightly stated is probably not the best value for money, and nor is it the best value for it's not a good return on us. We're piling up and stockpiling backdated jobs. We have to take action. I don't think 4 years is a long time. I spoke to my counterparts in Islington, which I believe is a borough that we sometimes aspire to. Islington have been stuck in a 25-year contract with their highways and street lighting. I think us going for a 4-year contract is not something that will bind our hands at this stage. I think it's a reasonable time for us to consider how we move forward. what is going to prevent us, that's your second question, and you rightly stated that we did move from one contract to another. What's going to stop us now? The LOHAC contract lacks teeth. It doesn't allow us, because of the way that it's been set up through TfL and through the framework with TfL, it stops us from being able to properly performance manage that contract. So we have two choices here for a meanwhile strategy. The first one is we do nothing and stay with LOHAC where we can't manage the contract properly, or we go with someone new for 4 years, and then we decide how, and in that 4 years, we decide how we're going to move forward within this administration. What did the APSI report recommend? Very few people have read that APSI report. I've had the pleasure of reading that APSI report. It's still in draft form, and it has not been finalised, so I don't think we can take anything from it. But it definitely didn't tell me where the spanners were kept in our council, that we can even decide, even contemplate at this stage to even think about changing a light bulb on a street lamp. Your fourth question, I believe, is about our move forward in terms of what we want to do as an administration in terms of our insourcing. It is, as I said before, deeply disappointing that we are here. It's 14 months after being a pioneer council for having the first cabinet member for insourcing, and we still have very little to show for it. But I know now that it's been moved into the leaders' brief, and that gives it a lot more prominence. And I know from the conversations in the short time that I've been involved in cabinet, we're doing a serious root and branch review about some of the projects and some of the services we can bring in-house, and I'm sure we're going to see more of that return to Cabinet in future times. Thank you very much for your time, Councillor Tucker.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillors got questions on this report? Councillor White? No? Anybody else? No. Okay, what we're going to do is we will address the issues when we return to the recommendations at item number 33. Right, item number 25. We now turn to this. This is Linden House Assisted Living Accommodation Refurbishment. This is another construction contract award. This report on Linden House also has exempt information which we will consider in the private part of this meeting. We'll consider the recommendations set out at section 3, subject to considering exempt information at item number 34. Councillor James, could you kindly introduce this report, please?
Once again, I'm really pleased to recommend this report. It represents another major investment in the provision of public services. Linden House is currently vacant. The proposal is to convert it into 4 flats, specially adapted for supported living for some of our most vulnerable, needy residents, mainly those with complex health and care needs, with learning disabilities and or autism and difficult behaviour. So this contract will enable 4 of these residents to receive care within the borough, and the award of this contract will speed that process. So I'm very happy to recommend it to you, and I hope you'll be happy to approve it.
Thank you very much, Councillor James. Any Cabinet colleague got any questions on this report? Any other councillors present got any questions on this report? Okay, so what we're going to do is we will return to the recommendations at item number 34. Item number 26 is new items of urgent business. There are no new items of urgent business. Item number 27 is the exclusion of press and public. We are going to adopt paragraphs 3 and 5, part 1, schedule 12A of Local Government Act 1972, and I'm going to request to continue the rest of this meeting in public, and I'm going to request in private, and we are going to request that members of the press, the public, all officers not needing for the exempted items, and councillors other than cabinet members to leave the room, please, and we have this meeting in